projector, so you guys don't have to move. He's
Can
thinking of
move it
some
over
different
there?
options, yeah.
That was one of the thoughts. Just put it over there.
Yeah, town hall.
Yeah. Create a flyer. Next to the fire station.
Oh yeah.
Well,
So why is the town making more money than us, Chief?
Who knows if they're gonna win?
No, but that's what I was.
yeah.
I think the town.
One guy handed me his envelope and he had money attached to it, and I'm like, this looks bad.
Yes.
We'll see this. All right, we will discuss, consider the 2016 preliminary budget is recommended by the Finance and Personnel Committee for publication and select public hearing date for adoption of the 2016 budget.
Start out a little bit. Yeah.
You will.
This is just my idea on how to do this. You guys can choose any process you want, but my general plan is I'll start out with just discussing the budget at like a high level, and from there, each department head will go through their portions of the budget. Following that, I'll go through the entire budget page by page, pointing out a couple different items of note on each page, and then you guys can stop me here or there for questions as you see fit. Following all of that, what we've done in the past is then the board kind of creates a list of items that they would want to discuss further, and that kind of creates a separate agenda on itself, and then we'll take those items kind of one by one, and you guys can make motions to resolve those matters as we go through it. So, and then Deb and I will kind of update on once there's a change, how that impacts the budget and where we're at overall. So with that, starting with the this current tax levy from 2014 was $3,080,653. The board's direction for the budget was to have no increase to the overall levy, with the exception of increased debt service for the municipal services building. That's $175,430. That impact to the average house of $250,000 assessed would be $77 increase to the tax bill. So following that, each department head and their respective committees put together recommended budget based on that overall direction. Of course, when they're looking at the budget, they're looking at it for their specific department needs and not necessarily looking at it how myself or the board would look at it. When he compiled all of those requests, that came out to a $250,225 increase, which is about $75,000 above the approved direction from the board. That impact to the average house was $110. Just kind of walk through some of the items from the committee department head recommended budget. Within there was $7,000 for new election equipment for the 2016 presidential election. There was addition of a lieutenant position, second in command for the police department. Total cost, including benefits, $105,000. There was addition of a police officer, union position, patrol officer, $72,639, including benefits. Addition of a foreman position for public works, $84,761. Within that position, part of it is funded by the water and sewer utility. $33,057 would be supported by the tax levy. There was an addition of a public works technician position, which is the general public works laborer type position. That total was $68,410. $26,680 falls onto the levy. And then addition of 3 part-time parks maintenance employees at $42,000. Then the budget came to me the levy came out to essentially what the board asked for. It was $30 over the approved direction, $77 impact to the average house. All of the items that we talked about in the committee and department budgets were included in mine, with the exception of one of the police officer position. The union position was eliminated, and the public works foreman position was eliminated. I added a couple things. I added a financial management plan by Ellers. $9,000 of this would be on the tax levy. This plan would help us. They would work with both staff and the board to put together a 5-year plan to incorporate all of our capital, operating, debt, everything into one, so we can better plan for our tax levy going forward. So I included $11,000 for new carpet and chairs for the boardroom here. Reduced legal services by $5,000. Reduced our salt purchases of $15,000. Added $15,000 for hazardous tree removal for Governor Taylor Park, and then there was $12,000 for raises for specific personnel. Then following my review, the finance committee met. We had some good news actually. Since they met, we had an increase in the transportation aid from the state of $30,000, so that helps the overall situation. The finance personnel committee ultimately, and this is the budget that you have in front of you tonight, has a $148,072 increase, which is a $66 impact to the average home.
What's the general
$66. And some of the changes that the finance personnel committee made, they added $15,000 to parks and playgrounds capital improvements. The money's planned to be used for the village's bleachers to get them into current safety code compliance. Basically to rehab the current bleachers that don't have.
You might want to fill these two in a little bit about that, just so you understand.
Sure.
They're not
I think we'll get into it more when Sean get it. Yeah. There was a reduction of $6,000 to the Colonial Club contribution. There was a reduction of $4,000 to street lighting budget.
That should be 9, Matt.
No, we lowered it down to 4 because I didn't feel comfortable with the full 9 after looking at the full year out.
What did we recommend?
Well,
The recommendation was 9, but for Deb to look and see how, if that was
Well,
actually feasible.
Right, we asked for that.
But we had, we were able to make it work easily with the additional revenue from the transportation.
So we're still
needs,
using 4,000 out of there?
Yeah, there's a reduction of 4,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
well then we should change the parks to 10 then. That should be supposed to be a 1-to-1. It wasn't supposed to
Okay.
be a.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, any changes.
Yeah,
we
that's
made.
okay. That's it. All right.
Yep.
Well, we need to talk about that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mentioned $12,000 in my recommended budget for salary adjustments for personnel, and there was a reduction of $3,500 to that. So that essentially brings us to where we are currently, and we'll start with Parks and Rec and then go Public Works and Police.
Can I ask some questions on your letter?
Sure.
So is the financial management plan by Ellers? That's in the budget?
Yeah.
Do you expect that to be year on year? Like, is there a maintenance fee, you think, with that? Or is it something that after they turn over the report, staff will be able to maintain it, and then every 5 years, maybe we hire Ellers to update it? Or
Yeah.
do you think there's year on year on that?
My best guess it would be less than a couple $1,000s maintenance on their part to just do some real general updates, but I would think for the most part we could handle that, and yes, it would be a cost of every 5 years probably.
The major impact.
Right.
Okay. That's all. That's.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all I have.
And then I'll just touch base on reserves. I had this discussion with Pat, so the general undesignated cash reserves that we have, the board's policy is to stay between 20 and 30% reserves to expenditures. So at the end of 2014, we had 534,000 in reserves. That was the audited amount, and that put us at about 25%. So we're right in the middle of the policy of the board's policy. Looking ahead to the end of this year, and it's just a projection, but I see our reserves going up to, I hope, a little over 700,000, 724,000 is
At the end of the year,
by the end of the year, 724,000. However, the addition of the police department this year, drastically increased our expenditures, so the percent drops down significantly, down to about 21%, 20.73 exactly. So, given that, I wouldn't recommend that we use cash reserves. That's what our bond rating folks look at when we, like the next big project would be the Seldell plat. It would be a difficult bond rating call with those folks. So I wouldn't recommend using that. We do have a debt reserve as well. The debt reserve is to be used specifically for paying down debt, and at the end of 2014, that was sitting at 217,000. Our auditors recommend that this gets drawn down as quickly as possible. In 2015, we used 100,000. So just going off of that, we have 117,000 left. In the proposed budget is using 100,000 again. So that's the plan there.
Is there a reason to not just use it all?
Just given the end of the year, you never know where things are going to fall with the. I wouldn't want to get too exact down to a. I'd like to round in those instances.
Is the idea to draw that to zero eventually? Like
Yeah.
that account's
Yeah.
got to get eliminated.
Yeah.
That's the whole goal.
When I started, it was at like 500 or 600,000, and so I don't know however it got. I don't know the details on why it got to that level, but we're taking that down. We haven't gotten the final. We haven't paid all the final bills for some things at the municipal services building, like the asphalt for the wash bay door. But even with those, the project there, from what we borrowed, should be under budget. So this reserve amount should be there for the following year as well. So we should have something for the next budget too. So I don't think it'll be zeroed completely.
Because that looks like it varied, like in 2012, 11 to 12, we used 274 to 200, I think, so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay.
That was Matt's first year, right? 11, 12?
Well,
The auditors were after us for a long time to work it down.
get that out of you.
So, Sean, you can start when you're ready. Let's get the page.
Start on page 3.
And maybe just a note too for any folks watching on cable or on YouTube later. This meeting is a little bit more informal. It's a workshop of the board. It doesn't really come off that well on TV, but we are hoping in the future to have some individual short PowerPoints with each department on a projector, and we're probably have the projector moved so it works better with our setup here. So hopefully that'll be improved by next year. Sean?
So it's on page 3, I thought we'd just start with our revenues, and I'm just going to, excuse me, touch base on some highlights. First of all, we're fortunate that things are going really well in Parks and Rec. We're having a lot of fun, and we say that every day when we come into work. We've since this time in 2014, we've had a 28% increase in our registrations over the same period. So we're drawing more out of the Madison area. We're getting more town people, so our numbers are going way up. And so in that light, we've also increased some of our revenues. Just some highlights here, and please ask questions as we go. We created a concession revenue line, which is something that's new. In the past, we've just done $300. Well, now we've upped that to $1,500. And how that's been working in the past is we've been paying our concession workers out of our baseball fund, and so now we're taking this fund and creating. We know that, and the reason why I was at $300 and now it's going to $1,500 is because we've covered that. We've covered paying them out of that fund. So a lot of what we've done, a lot of what we're doing is trying to clean this up and make it look presentable, because things have been kind of all over the place, and so we're trying to make it just be very transparent. So that's the first one. Flag football, we've raised a little bit. Again, participation numbers are up. We added some 4th through 8th grade leagues, so that went up just a little bit. Let's see, revenue dance, that one went down. That's due to, we decreased that by 2,600, and that, part of that there used to be an MG dance team that contributed to their revenue there. They no longer run their dance program through, or their dance camp through our rec department, so that decreased that number a little bit.
Do you want to just maybe explain to the new board members exactly what we do as far as pass-through that function? They might
Okay.
not realize that.
So a lot of, we handle all of, well, I shouldn't say all of, a lot of the MG camp stuff. So those folks will register through us. We take in the fees for whether it's football camp, youth football camp, basketball, both boys and girls, volleyball. We take in the fees, so that, just for an example, the show choir camp, that was new to us this year. That was a $9,000 increase in our revenue. So that doesn't all go to us. We pay a lot of that back up, but we in turn take $5 per registration that comes into us just for kind of a convenience charge. So several of those camps, so that contributes to a lot of our revenue. Does that make sense? Where are we at here? Youth enrichment programs, we're up huge in that. And for those of you, a youth enrichment program is anything that's not a traditional sport, so to speak. So like ski trips, our Spanish classes, babysitting classes, glass fusion, acting classes, tumbling and cheer, archery, those things are all considered youth enrichment because they're not a traditional, say, ball sport. All of the other basketball, tennis, all of those things have their own expense account. So the enrichment, all the revenue for those type of things come into that one account. That's why that one is so large. Volleyball also, we increased that one a little bit as well. Any questions on revenues? We're pretty comfortable with things. We're, again, like I said, we're very happy and we're very fortunate to have, again, to have a 28% increase in our registrations.
Matt, or maybe Sean. So if I'm looking at this sheet right, the last 3 columns, committee presented budget 2016, that was the now budget. The budget we're actually looking at is the village admin budget 2016. The village admin 2016 budget, that's the budget.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So with the increase, you're showing, if I look at the total, the line item total public charges for service, you're seeing less revenues?
It's
Even
not
with the
all
increase?
parks.
It's not all parks.
No,
Oh, okay.
The top portion is not parks.
Yeah, there's snow removal charges, public works, miscellaneous charges, administrative fees, tax and title search. So there's a lot of things that aren't Parks and Rec in there.
Basically starts at 46,710.
So that part has the increases. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
then.
So to add to your point on the column, I mean, we could we could change that far right column at this point to say, we could have changed it to say finance personnel.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure I had the.
Right.
I'm looking at it.
Yep,
That's
you
fine.
got it.
So what is other earnings, general government?
Just that. All
Other,
those things that don't fit into another category.
another bucket? Okay. So we're not talking about that right now, we're only talking Parks and Rec part? From the 76,
Yeah, for now.
4710
Well,
down?
I'll come back.
We'll come
and I'll
back
go
to that
through
part?
these I'll go
Okay.
through page by
All right,
page.
no
Yep.
problem.
So if you would like to move to page 21. So again, this is our parks and playgrounds account. Most of that has remained exactly the same. Some of the things that we did change, this budget traditionally in the past was created for a one-person department, and now it's a two-person department with myself and Reese. So we increased like our telephone, which is our cell phones, from the 400, or excuse me, the 600 that it was to 1350. That's a real number. That's what it costs for both of us to have a cell phone. Training and travel, again, that it was a one-person department. It used to be $500. We go to two things a year, a spring workshop and then our fall conference. And so that $500 does not cover both of us to do that. I take myself out of the parks and playgrounds one, and Reese, and we can talk about that when we get there, but Reese comes out of the recreation one. So that $1,200 is a real number for me to attend 2 trainings a year. The big one in this one would be our turf services, which is our True Green, and what we pay for that. Traditionally, that 75 has not been a real number. It's been closer to 14,000. And so right now I've sent out for bid. We're going to kind of revamp what we do, because I believe what we do is more than what we need to do. And so to make it more of a real number, obviously the committee went to 12, but I'm pretty confident that we can do what we need to do in the village and keep it looking as good as it is for 10, for at least now. So that's a little bit of a sizable increase there.
So the capital improvements is,
That's the
That's
bleachers.
Bleachers and Governor Taylor Park, 15 for each at the moment. You want to touch base on both of those,
Yep.
Sean?
Bleacher is, we have all of our bleachers short of one. So there's 4 of them at Fireman's Park, there's 2 at Community Park, there are 4 at Taylor Prairie, and there are 2 at Houston. And all of those, with the exception of 1, do not meet compliance anymore. Currently anything over 3 steps high is required to be caged. We're not mandated by law to do it, but it's good common practice. So in talking with this, for us to do everything at once would be around the $25,000. As long as if we choose to do this, as long as we're making an attempt, if there should be, and there hasn't been any accidents where anybody has fallen off one, it's one of those deals where as long as we're making an attempt, we're moving in the right direction. So that, after the last committee meeting, that's where that $15,000 came into play. It's either, and we talked about pulling them, which is, an option. If we choose not to do it, then we would have to pull those and just take them out of service. Because I just don't feel comfortable with that liability of just hanging over our heads of anyone falling off the back of those bleachers.
They can be retrofitted? They don't
They
have to be
can,
replaced?
yeah. Yeah, you're looking at, to replace one, just for discussion purposes.
It's
$1,000
expensive, right? I mean,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, if we go through and do, you know, if we looked at each individual park, to replace one set of bleachers is about $8,000. To retrofit one set is about $2,000. So it doesn't really make sense to purchase new. If we purchase new, we'd have to do it anyways. We would have to surround them in cages, or we just purchase new and smaller and just stay under that three-step rule where it wouldn't be considered I shouldn't say violation, but not to meet standards. And then the other 15 is Governor Taylor, and we've talked about that a little bit, just going in and cleaning up the dead stuff that's there, and getting rid of that and opening that park back up. I've talked with Matt about possibly in the future, like for the 16 budget, maybe increasing our forestry budget a couple $1,000s a year, just to kind of be preemptive in going in and being able to do that stuff instead of, because I think the last time we got hit with this was 2010 or 2011, where we paid somewhere around $19,000 to have basically the same thing done. And so we'd rather be able to go in and do it, you know, yearly, or at least expect it. Our challenge is that we don't have the equipment to do that. So we don't have a bucket truck. We have 20% of a forester, and so we have to rely on others to come in and do that work for us.
The best solution there, budget-wise, would probably be to have a strictly maintenance portion of the budget that for parking lots, parks maintenance, roads, everything all into one, and have a agreed upon amount that the board's comfortable in the budget, and keeping that same amount every year. Some years maybe you don't utilize that entire amount, but then we put that into savings specifically for maintenance for a year where we do need a lot. So both Sean and JJ are working on that for the next budget.
Questions on parks at all?
We're going to talk about each section, or are we going to go through the whole thing and then talk about each thing?
You can ask individual department heads questions as they're going through, but I'll go through the entire thing again quickly.
When you say capital improvements, I'm used to like capital projects, and then you like take depreciation on it. When you like listed here as capital improvements, is it just a one-time expense?
Right.
And
It's not depreciated.
there's no depreciated on it? Okay.
Correct. And continue, Sean.
Yep. So then on page 22 would be our recreation budget. Again, cleaning things up here a lot. We'll just start at the top with our training and travel. Again, increase that from 600 to 1,200 again for the same reasons. It's now a two-person department. We did. There's our concessions. We did reduce our operating expenses by $1,000 because part of that is that we're fortunate that with our program guide now, we used to pay for 2 program guides a year, and we don't have to do that since it's reduced significantly because we're doing it through the Herald. So we dropped that down $1,000. Let me back up. If you go to the top, so line item or account that ends in 208 and 209, if you can see that those numbers used to be 18.5 and on 209, and then 5,500 on 208. What we've done is we've cleaned this all up. So those, as you can see, we've used no money out of those, and now what we're doing is we're coding anyone that's has anything to do with basketball, whether it's an official or whether it's a coach or whatever the case may be. We're coding them to basketball so that we can really understand what it costs to run each program, instead of having these separate accounts where we don't know how much it costs to run basketball because I can't decipher which instructor came out of, that's in that instructor column. So that's why those columns we've spent no money, and you can see the larger increase at the bottom. Most of the increases that are there are due to that. It's because we're coding everything correctly. We can actually look and see exactly what every single program is costing us. And so that has really helped us make decisions moving forward. Has this program been worth it? Can we afford to buy some volleyballs for this program, where in the past we haven't been able to do that? So a lot of the large jumps that you're seeing are due to that. Baseball and softball, just for example, our old was 12,000, we increased that to 15,300, and again, paying for the correct people out of that account. Basketball, I mean, anything that you look at there that's an increase, just to keep time it's all due to that. So that's why, if that makes sense, that's why we're coding things differently, and that's why those things have increased. Especially like our youth enrichment and our adult enrichment, if you look, it was 4,500. Well, those are our youth enrichment is our hugest account. So that's why that's jumped from 4,500 to 26, because we're being more fiscally responsible and knowing where that falls into play.
Question?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Got quiet there, I wasn't sure where it's going. So how does it work? You did the income sheet and then you have expenses. So like the youth enrichment, you touched on that, a lot of good programs and all that stuff. So you're looking to bring in 25,000, but we're going to spend 26,000. So how does that variance work?
Again, some of the youth enrichment, some of it is taken out of different accounts. So like basketball has its own revenue account, but when we pay out, so like our basketball has a revenue account that it comes into, but it does not have an expense account. So some of that stuff, again, the youth enrichment stuff, it all balls into one. And so because of the difference in the revenues and the expenses accounts, that's where it balances out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's probably lossy because there's other stuff in there. I realize there's other stuff. So what's the variance between what you think you're making and what you're spending? Do you know?
Going into this year, we're probably going to be about 20,000 in the plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
It's your show, Sean.
That's.
Oh, yeah. Athletic facilities.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Forgot about that one. On page 23, the big change that you'll see there is our part-time wages. Used to be 18,500, and what that was for 4 college students. So from basically mid-May until mid-August. And what we're proposing on doing is increasing that by 43.5 in order to allow us to hire 3, is what we're shooting for, 3, and I'll call them 3 season employees, which would basically work from April until until October into November. And what that's going to do is really free up it's going to give us what we're hoping to do is find some people that have life experience. Currently, the only leadership that we have out there is when I can be there, and occasionally when Public Works can help, which they do a lot. But the goal for those 3 people would be 2 of them would be doing mowing constantly. That's one of the biggest complaints that we receive, is that our grass is too long for soccer or baseball. And right now we rely on Public Works to do that for us. And it doesn't always happen as timely as I would like, because there are more important things for JJ and his guys to do than mow. So what we're proposing, again, is that 2 of those folks would be doing mowing pretty much full-time, so we'd be on a schedule, we'd be taking care of all of that stuff, so Public Works wouldn't have to. So all of the mowing of everything that we mow in the village would now fall within those 3 guys, and I would rotate the 2 of the 3 into mowing, and the 3rd one would be kind of a crew leader for our college kids. So just to be able to provide some leadership and do some of the things that we typically rely on Public Works to do, whether it's trimming trees or anything that involves a power tool. I can't necessarily send out an 18 or 19-year-old kid to do that on their own. So we rely more on Public Works to do that stuff for us. So kind of making us a little bit more self-sufficient and not having to rely on Public Works as much. Yeah, that's the rotation of the plan. It, you know, for 43,500 or 42,000, it's in, I did this in Stoughton, it worked for us very well there. There could be an argument for full-time people. We couldn't even hire one full-time person probably for that amount of money. And one full-time person doesn't help us. Three, if you want to give me 3 full-time people, that'd be great. Yeah, exactly. But
They have to be paid.
yeah, and that's why I proposed it this way as opposed to asking for, you know, 1 this year, 1 next year, whatever. This would really help us for a significant amount of time, and again, take a lot of stuff away. Because three guys for me is basically like kind of like 3 guys for Public Works as well.
So is it, you said 43.5, you said 42, Maskelaar says 42, what's the number you need?
43,500.
43.5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what's, Matt, that's what you have on the sheet, 43.5?
For
Right?
wages.
43.5 is what's in here. I think
For
when
wages.
I was
I think you did
estimating it,
42.
I probably rounded at
Okay.
one point.
I just want to make sure I got that right now. Yeah.
It's correct in the budget.
That's what you need, okay.
Yep.
Perfect. I
We're
don't want to
co-
go back and be like, ooh,
Yeah.
we shorted them 2 hours before.
And we're confident that we can find people to work for, you know, when I calculated that out, that's, you know, we can be somewhere in the $13, $14 range. I think we can find people that are willing to work for that, work outside in the summer. I mean, they're not going to be working in the rain. Excuse me. And that's a beautiful thing about that is that we use them as needed. And also if, you know, if there's, JJ and I share well together and play well together. And so if there's an issue, something that he needs bodies for, then they shift over and they become Public Works employees as well. Questions? Alex?
You're looking at me? I'm out of questions.
Oh, you're smiling. I thought maybe you had something.
Saving it for JJ.
You can start, JJ.
Well, I just have and 3 of you already saw this, but yeah, it's all I've got because basically I don't have a whole lot besides cleaning up a lot of accounts, a couple of little changes. I'm just asking for bodies.
How many bucks? 4?
Basically, and it is hard to find a way to show what I can feel already in 7 months now, but we can do better, but I think we need the staff to do it. And like Sean said, if he has those guys, that's a step in the right direction. A lot of the things I want to do, though, we can't do proactively just because we are so reactive in everything based on our staffing levels. With that, and ultimately, I guess, big picture, I suppose, the thing that I think we need in order to operate the most efficient, just because we've talked about this before too, is the training and the certifications that are required, especially on the utility side. It's only going to get more stringent and more costly to keep people trained and certified, but there's no reason that we have to do it for everyone, except that at this level, we kind of have, you know, if 2 guys are off, I can't be without 2 water operators. So, I mean, we have to keep everybody certified. But ultimately, I think we're past the size now in the village where we should be split into essentially a streets and a utilities. I'm always kind of shaking around different ways to get there, but that was the ultimate reasoning for me requesting a foreman position, was just to have 2 people that are responsible. Basically, we have 1 foreman now that does it all, and it may not have to be that high of a level. There's all kinds of different ways it could shake out, but eventually, someday soon, we have to be to that point where we split. Not saying that on projects or when bodies are needed or equipment's needed, we wouldn't continue to work together, but
Within this budget, though,
But yes.
with the two positions being requested, one foreman, one regular position, looking like, the max we can make work being one, and given the size staff, it made sense to, if you're gonna have one, have it be a regular labor position, not a management level, since it's a smaller staff still. So if we're gonna add one, let's add a laborer position. That would give JJ 6 staff total down there.
And otherwise, it is just a lot of dramatic looking things that are just cleaning up accounts that were essentially just another efficiency we're improving, where rather than me trying to figure out how to account something that, depending on the week, could go in either one of these, we're making them one. So essentially, the street maintenance and the municipal garage are all going to be cleaned up. And I believe the only other changes of any real significance were, and Matt mentioned the salt, and we have a large reserve. I'm not worried. I'm not too worried. Assuming I keep hearing every morning it's an El Nino winter, so we're going to be just fine.
Hey, I'm digging a basement November 30th, so
Oh, all right. Well,
it's
then
gonna
we're
be balmy.
Yep. And then I just tried to make, I believe it was the professional services, tried to just make that more accurate to what we've been spending over the last few years, and then just added that to the repair contracts, or the road maintenance, basically.
What page are you looking at?
Hmm?
What page are you looking at?
Oh, sorry. Right now, I'm kind of all over, but right now I'm looking at 16 and 17, basically. Yeah.
What JJ was referring to with cleaning up some of those accounts was in regards to wages. The wages were spread around a bunch of different accounts. They were in municipal garage, and street maintenance, and instead of having those all split around, just move them all to one area. And they're all just under Public Works Administration now.
That's why I went from 48 to 238.
Yep. But let's see, telephone was just another one that just made, well, consolidated and then made a little more accurate. Again, it was over a few accounts.
That includes the phone to all the other buildings, right? Is that-
Yep.
Right,
And
like
then
the
cell phone
pump
for,
house and the wells and
yep.
Some of that's
Well, no, those are
charged
gone.
to
Actually, those are-
utility.
Those
Yep.
would be in
so
utilities.
some of these are pass-throughs?
Well, no, they're-
Or they're not, they're not on the.
They're not in, they're,
not
not
on
in
the-
here.
they're
Well,
not
they're
on the-
I believe they're all
They're
in the
usually
they're
quoted
60/20.
split between village and then water and sewer.
Yeah.
They're just quoted
this
that
is
way.
only-
it doesn't hit. That's just
This
The
is
village
just-
portion.
the, yep.
Really, that was really all the changes that were made for all this red ink and dramatic appearance. There wasn't too much besides the addition of a technician position. Yep, on 18, just, we had 2 sidewalk accounts that they're just gonna be one. Questions for JJ?
Are we up to date on street repairs?
How
How
do you mean that question?
Yeah, have the
I mean-
invoices come in?
Oh, no, not, you mean this year with
Yeah.
the, oh, no, we're still waiting on a big bill, so, yeah. But it's gonna be, it's probably gonna end up under budget, which, for me, I mean, I'd like to spend every nickel on the roads. We're still in a good position to keep them decent in the village, and you'll probably hear me say this every year, so.
Jeff Weigand would be proud of you.
So I know it's kind of early, but is the intention eventually to split between streets and utilities then?
That'd be my intention, yep. And then it would be a matter of how it all be accounted. It would be, ideally, utility would do utility work, except, they'd snow plow, so I don't know if we'd have to do some percentage, but it wouldn't be as much. Yeah, it would be a complete split.
What's your backlog of work right now? What's your work, because I guess you got preventive maintenance stuff that you do on a monthly basis, and then there's emergency work, and project.
It's hard to quantify a backlog. Like right now, there's leaves out in the gutter that drive me insane, because that's the kind of thing that if we don't get them out, either it pours and there's clogs and it's flooded and we're coming in on overtime digging them out of inlets, where if we could have been proactive and just scheduled, hey, it's November, they're falling, let's get out there with the streets crew planned, and if emergencies come in, utility guys have got it, or depending on the time of year right now. Well, right now based on Res 2 we're off schedule too, but I'm just thinking hydrant flushing's behind schedule right now because of that. So right now, if there was a big hard rain and all the inlets got clogged, we'd lose hydrant flushing time tomorrow, because we can't start until it gets a little warmer, now that it's freezing in the morning. So those kind of things, it's all reactive, but it'll get done. That's the thing, the guys are great, everything gets done, but hydrant painting, we're behind on.
Curbing.
There are curb painting, signs. There are signs that I see, and as I pass them, I make a note if I see them. But that's something that we could have somebody just proactively taking sign inventory and making sure that because that's another one that they're regulated. It's not just aesthetics. They are supposed to be a certain reflectivity and maintained properly.
How much do you think, this is a really awful question, I'm sorry, guys. How much do you think it costs us in our reactiveness?
That I won't even try and answer that, because it'd be I'd make it up. I don't know. It'd be.
At least it's honest.
I mean, the one that drives me nuts right now, and it's just because of what I did, and we could be there with just a few more staff and probably some training and a little bit of tiny bit of equipment. But we had a few main leaks, and when I get those bills, that we have to staff it so we have at least 1 or 2 people here on overtime for 1.5 of them, and then we paid. Well, they were both Houston that responded, but so then we're paying, and I don't think they overcharge us for anything. I think we got a great deal, but they're making a profit where we could have saved a lot of money, and that's just one, and I'm not saying, and if the guys were here right now, they'd probably be giving me the stink eye for saying we're going to start digging main leaks. It's not going to happen overnight, but that's something that you don't need. You don't need a fleet of 50 vehicles and a staff of 100 to do. You can make those reactive repairs a lot cheaper. I mean,
We try to keep track of those, so over
those I do have
we can
yeah.
be able to at least ballpark and answer it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could,
Question like that.
for right now, the main leaks, we could have saved like probably $15,000 this year. But again, that would have been adding at least 2 more people and then a shoring box. So for just my 7 months, it doesn't make sense, because we'd add people and some equipment. But over time, I'm just going to track it, and I'll keep coming back to you, and eventually it'll be millions that we could have. But otherwise, it is hard to quantify a lot of that too. Because the guys they turn all the valves, anything that's a DNR requirement and affects public safety, they're going to make sure that the hydrants work. And I've made that clear, and they were already doing it. They're going to make sure that the water main valves work, for the most part. I mean, because it's required by the DNR. We're going to sample the water. We're going to put eyes on every unit well and take a water sample every single day, 365 days a year. But that being said, we could do more with the valves. The hydrants could be prettier. They could be maintained better with just a little bit of time. So, but it's hard. I'm not going to attempt to quantify it.
We need to get a leaf pickup.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I had a concerned citizen just ask.
I'm sure you all will, and I'm glad you guys hear it as much as I do. Just because, then you're aware of, people live in a community this size that they're going to start expecting a little more of that. So Yep, but that'll require,
And it's gonna rain this.
And that will help with deferred maintenance as well.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
preventing sucking up them leaves, yeah.
yeah, that once they're into the inlets and into the storms, yeah, and they start breaking down, it may, these leaves that are bothering me now may not cause us an issue for a year or two. But then, if we're not getting to, which is gonna be more stringent requirements too, but inspecting all the inlets and outfalls and the stormwaters, there's more focus on water quality, not just the groundwater that we drink, but the water that we send off to the rivers and lakes. If we're not proactively checking all those spots, we're not seeing that the leaves are building up because they don't flood, but eventually they do, and now it's been sitting there 2 or 3 years, and it's a 3 or 4 hour job with a vector and a couple guys, and it's just, that's all easily avoidable.
Is one person enough?
And
No.
I can answer that one.
Don't answer the question.
No, yes. And
That will
honestly,
do.
I like it right now just selfishly because then I can say I got to get out and help on this day or that day. When really I should be in the office and I should be, he does too. And I think we both shouldn't be, and we both go, well, gotta, because we do. And we should be probably doing the higher level stuff all the time. But right now, sometimes it's unavoidable.
But one person
Anybody will help.
will
One-
is that a Band-Aid or is that true?
No,
actually
because,
helping?
and I do, it sounds corny and I don't know them well enough to, things could change by this time next year, but these guys I've been around municipal employees since I was 18, and they're not perfect, they're not best friends, but they're doing a great job. So, no, one helps, and you'll be fine with one.
All right, then, no more talking.
All right.
Right. Chief Labor had a memo that was in the packet. I don't know if you're going to start with that, Dan, but it's you can take it from here.
Sure. The 2015 budget was $1,319,000. I initially started off with that, and Matt eliminated one of the positions, so we're actually, for the 2016 budget request, we're asking for $1,252,000 instead of...
Page 11, sorry, Dan.
Page 11 is the actual budget document. And some of the savings highlights, officers are paying more this year for their health insurance. They're also contributing more towards retirement. So those are things that have been negotiated in a union contract. Those officers actually, when you take into account salary versus what they're paying in, they're actually maybe losing a little bit for this year. But you get it back in the end because you get a pension if you're in law enforcement. So that helps them. As you can see on our budget here, a police department budget is usually about 90% personnel. So what we have in our budget is limited with what we can do to knock things off unless you're cutting people. Some things that have gone down are retirement and health insurance. You'll see health insurance went from $212 in 2015 to $175. Retirement went from $91,000 down to $80,000. We're also cutting back on vehicle repair and uniforms. Vehicle repair we're cutting back because we're going to be leasing 2 newer vehicles that will hopefully require a lot less repair. So those things are being cut back. Professional services, that's being cut back substantially. So there are things that are being cut. And then in regard to the memo...
Just one quick thing,
Sure.
Dan. There were 3 main items in this 2015 budget that were essentially transitional items due to the police department dissolution. That would be a chief severance at essentially $40,000. Under professional services, as Dan mentioned, that was for the consultants during the police study. That was about $50,000. And then there's a contingency line item on the very bottom of the page. That was 43,000, 44,000, and those are not in this budget, so you can continue.
Sure. So in 2014, when the Moffett study was done for the department, their second recommendation under the management and organizational structure document recommended a second in charge of the police department, which would be a lieutenant, non-union position. And that position would be essentially a second shift position, because right now we used to have 3 people on third shift, 3 on second, 3 on first shift, and then your police chief and a detective. When that officer left last fall, I believe, we did not replace that position. So we have a hole on second shift. So we have only 2 officers working that. Generally, there's only 1 officer working second shift. So what we're trying to do is get our department back up to the 11 officer recommendation, which would give us 3 people on each shift so that they could rotate. That lieutenant would be a working position, not just an officer, not just a supervisor, but kind of a hybrid position. So that would give us also what we're looking for as far as a overlap of supervision. Right now, we have 2 acting sergeants. They don't have the usual experience. They don't have the usual training and or education that you would expect from a lieutenant position there. They're officers. They're doing a great job. They've done a great job so far. I'm very happy with what they've done. But we do need a second in charge position with the police department. And we do need nighttime supervision, obviously, with the liability and law enforcement nowadays is the scrutiny is there, and you really do need someone supervising in the evenings also. If you're looking at statistics, which sometimes can be misleading, sometimes not, but the state of Wisconsin, from the Office of Justice Assistance, per 1,000 population, there's an average of 2.2 officers in the state of Wisconsin. In Dane County, that's even higher. There's an average of 2.6 officers per 1,000 population. And for the Cottage Grove Police Department, we're currently staffed at 1.6 officers per 1,000 population. We did, in the Wisconsin publication Crime in Wisconsin in 2012, showed that property crimes went up 2%, burglary up 40%, motor vehicle theft up 25%, in Cottage Grove. Statewide averages for all of those were less than 2%. And then, as you can see on page 2 in my memo, the Baker-Tilly study, also done, referenced the police department in December of 2013. Their quote from their consultant was the Village of Cottage Grove has an extremely low comparable per capita cost for policing. We are still somewhat low, as you can see, by comparison with regional departments. Every village, every city has a different need for policing, but generally you can see, I think a good comparison is McFarland. They're a little bigger, but they have 16 officers, whereas we have 10. They have 8,000 population, we have 6,600. They have the same rough square mileage that they cover, which usually isn't a statistic you use, but it shows how spread out their population is compared to our population. And those departments that get by with less generally get by with more officers than we have, plus they have part-timers. We don't have any part-time police officers. We have 10 full-time and that's it. So if we have a hole in the schedule, it's filled by either someone taking the overtime or we don't fill that hole in the schedule. And what we want to do, and what I want to do in the future, is to have 2 officers on from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. on our busiest nights of the week, which are Friday and Saturday. And it is not a great idea to have just 1 officer working when we have those busy periods. We are as you can see recently from our overdoses on heroin that we had in the village and search warrant we had where the drug unit and our department seized 3 ounces of heroin, it's here. They go right to the east side of Madison to get it, or I'm sure it's available in Cottage Grove too. So there is a drug problem. We are very close to a large metropolitan area with a lot of crime and a lot of drugs, and it's here. And the problems that come with it are here. In addition to the crime we have here, we also have a lot of calls for service. And that's what takes up the most of our time is calls for service. We get a lot of calls for service, average of 8 per shift for officer. And our officers here, because we only have 1 detective, also do the investigative follow-up most of the time. Our detective can't do the investigative follow-up for every case. That is usually done by the officers. So in addition to their regular calls they're handling, they're also going out there and following up on investigations, which is the model for a lot of departments of our size and even bigger in the area. Police officers in small departments are responsible for patrolling and investigating after the fact. Larger, more complex cases go to the detective. I compare some of the staffing for supervision on page 3 of my memo. One of the big things and I brought this up before at Village Board, is our other function is emergency response for medical emergencies. And we oftentimes, depending upon where Deer Grove EMS is, we're the first people there, and sometimes we're the first people there for 10 to 12 minutes. And we have AEDs, we have other training and equipment for medical emergencies, and if our 1 officer on duty isn't in the village, there is quite a bit of lag time potentially before that person can get that medical help that they need. So I think that's another very important factor to take into consideration. Plus, from an officer safety standpoint, it's usually better to have 2 officers on duty, obviously, to back up one another. And being this close to a major metropolitan area, crime is an issue. And Madison is getting even closer. So based upon the various statistics and current staffing levels and averages, I am highly recommending that we add a lieutenant position to the police department. And I think I wouldn't be asking for this if we were average or close to where we should be for officers. When I was the police chief in Milton, the mayor there asked me last year, said, I can get you another officer. And I said, no, we're where we should be, and I didn't request it. Here, it's a little different. We definitely need that position, and it's a public safety issue that I feel that we should address.
Chief, in your professional opinion, the 2 officers that you moved into the sergeant role, are they able to take over more supervisory, or are they not qualified in your opinion?
Well, you have to keep in mind they're not allowed to do any discipline. They're not allowed to do those types of things because they're in an acting position.
Could they be moved into that role?
Could they?
Yes.
If we were to make another position for them, is that what you're asking, or?
Okay, I'll just.
Could they apply?
If instead of hiring a lieutenant, and I want you to tell me what you think, because I don't know. If you just hired another officer to fill that position and used the money to expand these sergeant positions, is that something that would work, or is that not possible?
Per the Moffitt study, they recommend a lieutenant, and they're recommending that because of this person's education and experience and training.
And we don't have that in our current force?
No. Could one of those acting sergeants be developed into that? I think so, yes. Could we, and I hate to even bring this up, but could we just hire a police officer and promote one of those sergeants? We could also do that. That would save a substantial amount of money instead of hiring a lieutenant. But you folks hired the Moffitt group to do this study, and they're the ones that made that recommendation. And I agree with it. But could we just hire an officer save $35,000 on salary, save substantial amount probably on benefits, because if you hire an officer, they're usually single and don't require family plan. We could save a ton of money there too. But that's an option, obviously. If the board doesn't feel that, that lieutenant position is viable, then my fallback position would be an officer position.
My question to you though is do you think that that's something that would work?
I would make it work.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Yes. Is it the recommended way to go? No, because there's a big learning curve to be a supervisor. I've been doing it for 1992, 23 years, and I'm still, learning things on a daily basis. So it's not something you just jump into and all of a sudden I'm a supervisor.
Any other questions for Dan?
Yeah. I'm gonna nitpick a few things, and then I guess I got a question for Matt too. The motor fuel. Again, these are pennies over millions here, but you budgeted 30 grand. You're actually at 10, and you're thinking you're going to spend another 30 next year, but it doesn't math out that you're going to actually use another 30. Is that because I know you don't you buy on contracts? It's not like the going rate at the pump.
It is the going rate at the pump.
It is the going rate at the pump.
Yes.
Oh, that's it. Okay, cool. So we'll probably be under budget on that again then, because I think you're projecting 20 grand this year, but you're asking for 30. Is it worth making an adjustment on that line? Guessing it's pennies over millions, but
No, those are good things.
Every little bit
Those are
helps.
good things to bring up.
every little bit helps.
No, we discussed it, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember why we didn't knock that down. It
Okay.
was discussed, and I
All
think.
the mileage is gonna be going there,
Oh,
Are you
for
moving?
one.
Oh, you're moving my.
Yeah, we zeroed there,
That
that's
mileage
right.
that was put in last year,
um, that you didn't
in
use at
air.
all, right?
Right,
The 10 grand you move. Okay, so you're off. Okay, that makes more sense then.
so part of it's mileage.
You drop that down. Okay. And then it also, maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. The second line item, the wages, doesn't seem like it's the actuals. That number just seems low, the 2015 actuals, compared to where you should be.
That's,
The 292 just doesn't seem to be. Does that seem right?
I think, I don't handle that, but
Okay.
I think that probably goes up at the end of the year when you have to pay people out for certain things.
There's a. Okay, that makes sense.
Do you know, Deb?
It does, but I was also wondering, I don't remember what was in the budget last year, if there was.
Yeah, I'm thinking there was another officer, some type of officer in the budget that.
No,
didn't get
you're right. There was,
Yeah,
The-
that
there
never
was
got
a-
hired.
we were, the recommendation when the board accepted the Moffitt study was that they pursue a lieutenant position after an officer would leave. They would fill it with a lieutenant, which would cost a little bit more. So I think that's,
we were gonna hire, Chris wanted a lieutenant, we were gonna hire him in June, right?
yeah,
was
so I
one
think
in
there was
there
a
for half a
half a
year.
year position budgeted for, so I think that's why that's higher.
So
And it
you're
never
right.
came,
And that makes sense because it's about a $70,000 variance, which is about what that looks like. So so the 242 includes the head that you don't have. That's the 2015 budget, and then basically the budget for wages is flat. Does that seem right then? If the people are flat, so you're going to absorb that 70
Wages
grand.
should go up. If you
It should
kept
go
the
up a
same
little bit.
people from year to year, it should go up because the union got a raise this for 2016.
Right, but the budget for 2015 is 70 grand too high because you didn't hire somebody.
That I don't know about.
So
That's pretty damn.
so it went up $22,000, or no, it went up a little bit more than that. Sorry, it went up, but
go-
you're 70 grand over budget this year, but you have the same amount of people for next year, but the budget went up. Does that make sense?
mhm.
I don't know. I'm not.
I mean, that's almost.
So
I mean,
you're
it's
looking at-
almost
you're
basically. I mean, the raises, if you look at the straight numbers, 442 for this year, 454 for next year. So you're looking at a, what is that? Help me. $12,000 increase. But last year's budget is 70 grand too high. So you can still take the 14 grand, the 12 grand increase, but it should be knocked down by 70 grand because it's the same amount of heads. So there's about a $70,000.
I'm sorry, is there a question in there somewhere hidden?
Why is this?
Why is it in there? Why is there $70,000 too high in the 2016 budget?
I would have to pull up the two personnel spreadsheets.
I know that we didn't hire that person. I
That-
know that
yeah.
for sure. Obviously, we weren't
Yeah,
gonna hire.
yeah. And it maps out right. The 70 grand. It's round numbers. It's about $70,000 under budget this year, which is good. But then that under budget with the same head count should be reflected in 2016.
Yeah. I can
Want
go out.
to
and
step
look,
out and look at that, and then we'll get back to it?
I'll wait until all the questions are done.
Okay.
Because that significantly helps your levy. That takes out about half
Yeah,
of your. It takes
well,
about half
There's
of your.
probably a reason.
There's a reason.
Okay.
There usually
We'll
is.
we'll wait to hear it.
Yeah.
And then I guess my other question for Matt, you mentioned it's kind of to all three directors, and then really Matt can answer. The Eller study that you're looking at. Over the past year we've talked about a lot of stuff about the growth of Cottage Grove and all this other stuff. So is the Eller study also going to look and say, okay, as we increase, and like the police, because we just talked about it, the head count per 1,000, the utility works per capita, and then the amount of activities that we want to contribute to the parks because now there's more people. Is the Eller study going to also look at that and say, hey, as the village grows, this is what the budget's going to look like, and then also drill into and say, hey, in 2 years from now, Chief will need, if you don't get this extra head, he's really going to be strapped. If JJ doesn't get an extra certified water guy, this is an issue. If we don't get, more land mowers and stuff, these
Yeah,
are issues.
that's it.
The
That's
Ellers is going to
pretty
drill
much-
into that
That's pretty
and help
much
us with
exactly.
that?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be a really good deliverable
Mhm.
because then that is all those contributing factors is
Mhm.
the path forward.
I mean, they'd be going off of a combination of comparables and recommendations from the specific department heads and kind of meshing those together as far as, needs for the future based on growth and other things. But, they're not going to be doing a specific individual full organizational study of each
Right.
department, but
It's not like June 1st or you need to have, you're right, it's like.
yeah, it'll be close, but it'll help us plan where it's not going to be 1 year where you have to increase the budget drastically because we weren't planning for it.
Right.
It'll be a slower,
Right.
methodical.
We'll have more
process.
notice. Okay. So there's 70 grand.
Possibly.
Well,
Well, I mean, you should be accurate, I mean, yeah, we'll go to that now.
I guess kind of just going off of Jen's question, how long would taking that individual and making him into a lieutenant take with your projections?
Bare minimum, they have to go through the 40-hour leadership and police organization school. Sometimes those open up within a year. Sometimes they fill up right away. They just opened up for 2016 now. So if you hired someone next week, you might get them in 2016. Otherwise, you got to wait till the next year. Otherwise, you can send them to much more expensive and long-lasting schools, which I wouldn't recommend because then they're gone from your department for a couple months. So at bare minimum, you have to punch their ticket on the leadership and police organization, which is a 1-week school, very comprehensive and very good, and it gives them all the materials they need to be a supervisor. Then they need the experience. I don't think any of them have the 4-year education that's required, recommended, but sometimes you really don't need that to be a good supervisor. Some people function just fine with having a high school diploma and moving into a supervisory job. I didn't have a 4-year degree when I got promoted, and I didn't go to the FBI National Academy until 4 years after I got promoted. So it can be done, and we have good personnel, so could we find someone internally? I think so.
I guess this is a full-time position that we're getting requested for, correct?
Yes.
And part-time's not really an option, so, in your opinion, or?
No, part-timers are unreliable because they have full-time jobs. So they'll take the hours that they can fill in, but generally your part-timers are the people that,
Couldn't get a real job?
well, no, some are retired and want to work some of those hours. Some have certification in law enforcement but don't want to do that, so they do other jobs. And then some are looking for that full-time job and they take the part-time police job in the interim. And then when they get the full-time job, they're gone. But we have to spend 3 months field training every officer before they can go out into the field if they don't have experience. So you field train them for 3 months, so they're on the payroll, but they're not taking shifts. And so you're paying for that money up front. And that cost ends up being about $10,000 to train a brand new person and make them into a part-timer. And then you hope they're just not good enough to get a full-time job somewhere. So they stick around for a bunch of years and you have them at your disposal. But it's tough to keep part-timers and tough to get them to take the hours.
Okay. It just seems like a big jump so quickly, and so I'm just trying to look for alternatives, kind of what you guys were discussing, and see what was possible. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
We've had that discussion 100 times.
Yeah,
You
I know.
It's rough. It's the one industry where part-time is just kind of brutal.
Yeah.
Anything else for Dan? I can keep plugging along. You can start at page 1, and I just want to touch on a couple things on each, the couple notable items on each page.
Okay,
And then if as you guys have went through the budget, and if you noted questions and things like that, or specific items that you have questions on, feel free to let me know.
I just had one, Matt, before I
Yeah.
get started. There's one thing that I didn't see in here, is going over it, and it's one thing that has been talked about, is kind of getting Deb some additional help on accounting, finances, that sort of thing. Was that something that was analyzed for this year's budget, or?
It was looked at, but it wasn't as much getting her help, it would be having her do that 100% of the time. So it would be more of hiring, so she would no longer be the clerk, she would just be treasurer. So it would be hiring a clerk, and just given the needs of public safety and getting some maintenance help for parks and getting public works an employee, those just, I guess, took priority, but I mean, it's all up to you guys if you want to shift things around.
I think it's something to at least look into. It's very important.
Yeah.
It's an important position. It's something that.
Yeah, I think we've grown to a level where we should have more than just a 50% position. We should have someone 100% looking at finances and not relying on a combination of that and consultants. We've gotten by on that, but
Could you get by with a part-time person? I'm not suggesting that, but I mean, is that something that would work?
I'm not sure the level of, I don't know what that, I'd have to research that a little bit more. I haven't thought too much about a part-time person there.
How much would we save as opposed to using the consultants? Because obviously, if you're doing full-time, it'd be great to ratchet that back, and that's where you're going to get a lot of your savings to fund.
Yeah, I don't think the consultants are really just that wouldn't really save us anything, because the consultants basically audit, which that would be, that's totally
Still have to
separate
do that,
anyway.
yeah.
And then the financial advisor, which is, that they're paid when debt is issued, essentially, or sometimes special projects like evaluating a tax increment district incentive. So I don't see savings there. It would really just be creating a new full-time position, or bumping it up from 50% to 100%.
But doing so, that could create kind of savings and financial kind of,
I think it would just, I don't think it would create savings as much as just give me more of a peace of mind. That there's someone always looking at that. You know, for instance, when there's an election, she has those duties. You know, there isn't someone looking at the finances as much during that time period, so it's something to consider. I haven't thought about the part-time angle. But.
Well, I'm just guessing that her salary, the higher salary is driven by her expertise as the treasurer, not as what she does as a clerk, correct?
I mean, I'd want her to answer that a little bit more, because, I mean, clerk's not an easy job either. You know? I mean, being able to, knowing all the regulations in regards to elections and record keeping and those kind of things, so. But
She does all the work now. There's no is there segregation of duties? Meaning, like, if somebody keys in an invoice, she pays it out of the bank. There's no other approval process, and no other eyes on the paperwork.
it's two. I mean,
There is two.
Yeah, I mean, she does
All
a
the
journal
time?
entry. Yeah.
Okay.
hmm
And then, like, if
Or
If you go-
or another staff member, or Julie or Cynthia.
so, there is the checks and balances. So,
Mhm.
like, I mean, that's another good
Yeah.
case for
There's not
reason.
enough- There's not enough of it. I mean, that's the staffing size, which we wouldn't be able to correct even with an additional 1 or 2 people. It's just something that Baker Tilly's always going to pretty much note, is that we're going to have a lack of segregation
Yeah.
of duties.
I mean, like you can go in. I guess like bill pay. You pay your bills on the bank, and you know, if someone could go in and change the routing codes to somewhere else, and that payment wasn't actually made, the money was diverted. If there's no checks and balances there, that's obviously a need for extra heads to do that.
Well-
Segregation of duties is an important function of finance. Actually, it's something.
I mean, I get we have set up through our banking where there's certain thresholds where I get a notification if she's working on certain things. So, and then other times where I have to put in a PIN code if she's wiring money or doing anything like that. So, we put in the controls we can based on recommendations from Baker Tilly.
Okay.
Usually no one person can do a single transaction on their own. Somebody else has to touch it so that they can't. I mean, it's not the best, but it's a workaround so that there's assurances that there's nothing bad going on.
yeah. Do you have an idea of how much like that position would?
So it would be
So it would be a new clerk position. How much something like that would
a
look
new
like?
clerk position, 55 to 60.
I mean, if we're not planning on it now, it should be looked at for 2017.
I'm just thinking if there's some
Push
sort
it
of
away.
savings. I mean, having the finances watched over at 100% of the time is important. Rather than 50% of the time, in my opinion.
I'd say it's more than 50. I mean,
It
I'd
should
say-
almost trump everything. I mean,
my oversight, I would count at 15 to, we have actually 15% of my salary in treasury, so, doesn't make much of a difference, but it's 65% of a person.
Are you proposing we put that in here now?
at least look at it. I mean, that's, and talk about a savings in a different direction. If we can do a trade and do a police officer and upgrade one to lieutenant and get this individual to watch over finances fully, it's something to at least look at because it's that important in my opinion. And I know.
Is it something that we could look at hiring in June?
That's what I was trying
And
to ask the
making,
guidance
you know,
on that and the
So the impact isn't so dramatic?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of,
Had something to say.
No, I got nothing to say.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just,
That's
You
a-
know, being an auditor, I mean, I would love to see more staff in the office, but I'm afraid that right now, we're so late in the budget cycle that it'd be kind of hard to come up with a true analysis of how much that would cost and whether or not there's any potential savings in terms of actual savings in terms of oversight. I think it's definitely something we need to look at going forward, but I'm not sure that it's feasible to incorporate into the current situation.
I mean, the cost of benefits would be about, for full-time for the whole year, about 75 to 80 grand. So if it was
The whole
a
package.
June position, it would be about 40 grand.
and I don't think we really can look at this as what we're saving, because it's not really about what we're saving. It's about, are we doing the right things
Yeah.
with the taxpayers' money?
right.
I mean, I think where you'd see improvements would just be overall, you know, Deb would have 100% of her time to put together, you know, more reports, just better overall presentation of, you know, even the budget, things like that. There'd be a lot of help that way, so.
Okay, just something I wanted to bring up to.
I had
'cause
planned
didn't see
for,
it, so.
to, you know, I discussed this individually with a lot of you guys, but given some of the other needs, we felt we could maybe get by one more year. That
Okay.
was what I was thinking, but that's why we're here at a workshop like this, for you guys to discuss those kind of things. If we go to page 1, and I won't take too long doing this, because you know, there's a lot of other items to talk about. Page 1, revenues. The taxes from municipal utility, so the water utility pays a payment in lieu of taxes based on the value of their infrastructure, and with the improvements that they've been making, their payment in lieu of taxes has increased. So that's went from 188,000 to 285,000 for this year. So although that's something that everyone's paying as a user fee, it does at least help us on the tax side. State transportation aid under intergovernmental aid, that was the increase I noted. We just had our final estimate of, and it increased by 30,000. So that's 305,000. Page 2, if I get going too quick, just stop me. Page 2, most of these are building permit fees, and these are essentially a pass-through. So we collect the revenue, and then on the expense side, you'll also see the expenses go up in these areas, but it's essentially a break even. Page 3, Sean touched base on most of the revenue items for Parks and Recreation. I just wanted to note that overall revenues went up by about 60,000, which is about 2% from last year. Page 5, legal counsel. On the general side, I think we can knock this down a little bit, so that was down to 65,000 from 70. There's been discussion about trying to do some more ordinance work. So the ordinance line item was bumped up 2,500. Probably could be more, but that's what we settled on. Page 6, the change in administration budget was really just a shift of 15% of the administrator's salary to treasury, just to be a little more accurate as to what treasury costs the village. Page 7, village clerk. The capital equipment item on the last item under village clerk, that's the election equipment for $7,000. Deb, if you want to just touch base on what that all entails and what you've been going through with elections.
Yep. The ultimate goal is to try and find a bigger space. That's not happening. But in order to try to alleviate some of the lines or get people through a little faster, one of the big bottlenecks we had last year was feeding the ballot through the machine, because the new machines that they have actually take a picture of each ballot. And we don't have enough voting booths either. We're supposed to have so many booths per so many registered voters, and we're not anywhere near, but we don't have room. So what I'd like to do is get a second machine to alleviate that line, and then also get, if you remember back in school, the partitions that you sat behind when you took a test. Maybe I'm dating myself. And put them on tables instead and have them, that way they wouldn't, you'd have like 3, which would take up a lot less room than the individual voting booths.
Okay. No changes to treasury outside of, or nothing of note outside of the shift of the administrator's salary. That's on page 8. Page 9, professional services under Village Hall. That line item was increased. That's where the cost for new carpet and chairs was put in.
Where's that at?
Professional services under Village Hall on page 9.
Did you get a quote or did you just ballpark it?
Did some square footage, square foot of the room and commercial carpeting. Came out to about $9,000 by looking at Home Depot and the like.
And that's with installation.
Yeah.
What else is this room used for other than?
Nothing you can charge for.
Well, I know that, but I mean, is there any other? It's just the board meetings, the committee meetings are here.
It's
Court's
the only
here?
it's the only meeting room for
Municipal.
Doesn't Cottage Grove
staff
have-
here too.
Let me see.
Elections.
So
So it's $9,000 to do the carpet.
yeah, about $2,000 for new chairs.
This is gonna go over like a ton of bricks. I do like the town chairs. I've said that before. But no one's using these chairs.
Oh,
Not
So-
those chairs.
These
Those
chairs? Oh, these chairs?
Yeah, no,
Oh, I don't
I
really
don't
care
like
about
those
these chairs.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
I
think
can
Those
use-
chairs would say,
okay, I don't need a new chair.
we have taken this out of the
You can
budget
use the
every
normal-
year, but I'm
Yeah.
looking, and it
That's-
might
yeah.
be time. At least to do
Yeah.
the carpet. I don't care about the chairs. They're hideous, but they're doable. But the
Yeah.
carpet it's embarrassing.
Yeah. We should move the table. Kyle?
Yeah.
Scoot your table over that, please.
You guys maybe get just a couple chairs at least to finish off the rest of the. We're short
Yeah.
of a few.
Yeah.
That's not really
But-
my problem.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying though.
I wanted a
The
standing
chairs
meeting
are-
earlier.
The chairs are not it's not the end of the world, but the
The
carpeting
carpet.
does not look good.
It might be
No.
time.
Yeah.
What does everybody else think?
It's
Do it.
time.
Just the carpet, or do you want new
Do it
chairs?
all. Yeah,
Do it
let's
all?
Let's do it.
Get it done.
Yeah, we got bigger fish to fry.
All right, and then municipal services building on the same page, electric and heat. It's our first full year in the building, so we're getting a grasp on things, and so that electric and heat need to be increased to 30,000. Page 10, Deb, if you can touch base on property and liability insurance, there was a reduction of 7,700.
sure, this has to do with, we had passed a resolution to change to the municipal property insurance company. The budget that was put in here last year, our time frame is July to July. And because of all that, our insurance rates went way up, so the savings for the next 12-month period comes out to about $7,000 for the general fund. which is awesome.
And then back to the police, Deb, did you find anything
Yeah.
out?
Actually, if you look, the issue is that the way this spreadsheet works is what pulls in the actuals is what has been entered as of that particular time. If you look at what I put on your desk today, this gives you the financials through the end of October. So it's all in, balanced, et cetera, through the end of October. And if you look on page 11, the police wages, the actuals are actually 362,708. So the wages are coming in where they should be. The part-time, or the lieutenant for the part of the year, and actually the chief for part of the year, and the severance was all put into the salary line. The chief position starting in April, the lieutenant starting in August, September-ish, and then about 40 grand for severance. So it's coming in about where it should.
Yep.
Okay, page 12. School patrol crossing guards, increase of 4,000. That's been a
That accounts
item
for
that has gone,
that accounts for the summer help, extra help, right?
yeah, extra summer help, and there have been some years where that item has gone over budget, so just wanted to make a note of that.
Is there any chance that the police commission will have to meet more than normal this year?
We shouldn't have to.
If they have to hire
I
someone.
hope not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last year they had the union.
They're not
No,
involved.
they're not involved
No.
in that, sorry, scratch that.
Okay.
Just, I don't know if this is the appropriate time
Sure.
to mention it, but I know how much time does the whole school crossing guard stuff take up of your time? I mean, I may get in a lot of trouble for suggesting this, but maybe you could move it to the police department and we can handle that?
George.
Well, if it's only 5% of your time, I mean.
I hope it's not 5% of your time, is it?
We've got it right now set pretty good. Everybody likes where they're at, and we have enough people, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a year there where we had a couple people quit, a couple people were gone, and Julie and I were going out there every day crossing. And so then, yes, it took a lot of time. It's
But you have mostly Julie administrating that.
yes,
Oh, okay.
yes,
Well-
she does.
I mean, we had it at my last place. We had the crossing guards, and I know the secretary hated it because it's a big pain in the butt.
It can be.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that could help you out. You know, we would.
I mean, our biggest thing is, we have them calling our cell phones in the morning if they wake up and can't do it. Well, we can't probably get here on time. And if we call Public Works, sure, they can maybe get there, but it pulls somebody out. We can call you, but if one of the officers are doing it and they get a call for something else, that's our,
Something to think about. I didn't
Yeah.
know if it would help you specifically or the department up there, but
I don't think Jamie would be happy with you.
no, she wouldn't. All right,
We can certainly have that conversation.
okay.
Page 13, building inspection, just to make a note, you'll notice an increase in overall building inspection, but we'll also increase the revenues by that same amount. Page 14, emergency radios for Danecom on the bottom of the page on 14. We have not gotten Danecom radio service yet, so that 18,000 was what it was supposed to cost, but until it's working, we're not gonna pay it. So the money's in there just in case it does at some point during the year start coming on service for us. So has anyone from Public Works or Police, have you gotten any updates on Danecom?
They are hoping to get online next year, but we are, just like every other police department, pulling out of it and going back to our old radio systems until they get it figured out. It's a mess.
That's an understatement.
Yes.
It's
It
a
just
farce.
it just doesn't work very well, and I could be standing in the parking lot of 1855 Saloon and it doesn't work at all.
Skipping ahead just a little bit to page 16. Engineering professional services, on the tax levy, general portion, we haven't been seeing as much use of the engineering service, so that was reduced by 9,000. Most of their work has been utility-based, so that's not landing here.
Matt, before you go on,
Yeah.
can we go back to 15?
Yeah,
We had
the
a
weights
question.
and measures, yeah.
We had a
Yeah.
question in finance personnel about whether or not that could be passed through.
And I haven't found out anything about that yet.
Okay.
And you didn't think it was the Department of Administration that handled that?
I think,
I thought it was the food.
I think it could be health services, it could be agriculture, it could be any number of different state agencies that might have a hand in it. But I think weights and measures might be agriculture, actually. I think it's agriculture, but I don't know for sure.
I think it says right on the website.
Well, we get-
Yeah,
We
that's
get
what
in-
I'm
we get
thinking
invoiced, so
that
we
too
can-
now.
All we have to do is pull the invoice.
Yeah,
And figure out where to pass, I mean, what's the appropriate
Yeah.
way to pass that through.
And our question was, we were wondering if we could pass that through, right?
Yeah.
Right. Operator license.
What is it for?
well,
I mean, I know like gas pumps
Weights
and
and
stuff like
measures?
that. Yeah, I mean, how?
Go
what
to
do we-
grocery stores.
Scales at grocery
Make
The
sure
scales
you
at
got
grocery
the
stores?
bananas.
Oh, and we get
the pumps at the
I know
gas
the pumps.
stations?
Do we administrate? The village administrates?
No,
No.
No.
It's
the
a
state
pass-
The
does.
state doesn't, they charge
But
us.
we
They
charge.
But they charge us. Oh, fantastic.
Well,
And they're dead on with their budget, 1,600. I mean, it's
Well, yeah, they let us know. all the time.
fantastic.
Page 17, JJ covered everything that I was going to talk about. Just main items to point you to would be the repair contracts, which is road maintenance, an increase of about $8,000. And then a handful of line items down, roadway supplies, a good chunk of that is the salt, and that was reduced because we have a rather healthy reserve of that right now. Page 18.
Just out of
Oh.
curiosity, was that possible because of the salt shed? Or is it just a coincidence that we didn't use a lot last year?
Probably both, but having the storage that you can keep it
Okay.
fresh. So yeah, having the salt shed helps for certainly. Page 18, street lighting. We had discussed at finance and personnel reducing that line item by about 9. It ultimately reduced it by about 4. Deb, do you want to talk about what your thinking was there, just kind of going off of actuals and what you felt comfortable with?
Yeah, let's just go look and see what
It's the same number, I just checked it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are we expecting a bigger bill coming in, or?
Might get up a little bit because the daylight's less right now, but it's,
Right.
I don't think it's to a degree of that much. We're averaging $6,100, so technically we're gonna do 74,000, even if it's 9,075.
Well, I kept it at 81,000 because I was looking at the latest invoices, and they were upwards of 6,500 to 7,000 a month. If you take 7,000 a month, that's over 81,000. 81,000 divided by 12 is 6,750.
And we have to pay November and December yet.
Well,
That only adds up to
It's probably
75.
October, November, December, because you pay a month after,
right, but December's paid in January, doesn't it?
but it gets moved back.
Well, then there's no bill in January then.
And the January bill is
But
February.
there's still, if you take the total, the monthly expense,
We make sure we get 12 months in the year,
Yep.
regardless
Still
of
get
whether
12
it's
right,
January to December or,
So there's only 9 months in this bill, in this budget?
yes.
Okay. I thought.
So that would put it at 82
It
then.
all depends on when the invoices come in.
Right.
I mean, we aren't on an accrual basis here, we're on cash, a modified cash basis, so throughout the year, it's when the invoices come in, that's when they get, that's what month they hit it. So, at the end of the year is the only time we ever accrue anything.
and it's pretty common.
Mhm.
Does that account for, as the developments get put in, there's gonna be additional lights dropped? Or does that, how does that affect, how do you do that on the budget?
Do we take it over by phase, or?
Yeah, I don't believe we'll be taking those until it's the whole thing. I don't know for sure.
I mean, generally, we haven't been developing fast enough that that would really impact the budget to.
Yeah, it's not 20 grand in
drastically.
lights just showed
It's not
up, right,
gonna-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't have a good answer for that, but it, you know.
So we're not
it's
paying
been
for-
safe. It's been safe, we've been safe in the sense that we haven't been able, if we're really planning on a ton of new development, we'd probably want to account for an increase there, but I don't think we're
You should always,
growing that quick.
even if it's small, you should still account for it. But, okay, so the development just north of Glacial Drummond, we're not paying for those lights yet? Or we are?
I don't know, but even, I think there's only, there can't be even that many. Even with the amount of
No, but I
houses,
mean,
it's not, we may be, it might not even be. Yeah.
At this point, I would have to look at the invoices. We get probably 20 line energy bills,
Yeah.
all broken up, so I'd have to look, see.
Do you have to plow those streets then, Stu?
Yes.
They're yours? Okay. Cool.
Page 20, Health and Human Services, that's just the Colonial Club donation.
I need to talk about that a little bit. I've been fighting with myself on this one. And I understand the theory behind the reduction, but I'm a little bit concerned that it's the recommendation is too great. I actually did, at the Finance Committee, I did vote for this, but like I said, I've been fighting with myself. I mean, some of our senior citizens do make use of the Colonial Club, and they're vulnerable citizens, and we need to be prepared to take care of them. And so quite honestly, I would like to restore all of it, but I would be happy if we could restore at least part of it. I don't, I'm not sure exactly where it should come from. Maybe it's delaying the chairs, maybe it's something else. But I just feel like it's important to make sure that we're protecting all of our vulnerable citizens, and not just a portion of them.
I don't disagree with you, but that being said, I don't like government giving to 501c3.
Yeah. I mean, I've been fighting with myself. I even rationalized that some of our senior citizens, I mean, this specifically, the discussion was taking the $6,000 and moving it to bleacher repair. And
It makes it sound awful when you say it that way.
I know, but I don't mean it to sound awful because, in my trying to rationalize it, we have senior citizens who attend village athletic events, and they're as likely to fall as anybody else off those bleachers.
What's that?
But giving less money is not going to change the service that's provided to the Cottage Grove citizens. So I'm confused on what you're stating, because this is a donation to them, and it it's not going to change, what money we give them is not going to change one way or another.
And the bleachers, as far as falling off the side, the bleachers is for the kids falling through the steps. So, yeah, they're gonna fall, they're gonna fall.
I mean, we have seniors, I mean, like I said, I was rationalizing here, senior citizens, can trip and fall pretty easily too.
Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah, and so I've been torn with myself, but I thought we needed to have this discussion.
I'm okay whichever way it goes, it's gotta come from somewhere.
Yeah, and,
I'm torn on it too. I mean, I think it's, anytime you can provide a service to anybody, I think it's a great thing to do. I know, and I'm sure we all have it, especially Girl Scout season. Everybody knocks on your door, and you just can't give to everybody. You can't, and you try to. You do your best. I remember driving one day, and it must have been 30 below, and there was a girl in the corner selling Girl Scout cookies. I pulled over and I bought cookies, and she's out there freezing, trying to do her thing. But I also struggle with it is outside of the village, and I know that there's things that we could spend that money on here that benefits a lot of other people as well. So I was struggling kind of in the same sense, but also the other direction too, where I want to help everyone, but you can't. So I was actually also struggling with the other way around. Is it time to pull back on that and focus on some internal efforts first? You have to fix things before you can actually go help others,
Well, I think
So-
that's one of the reasons I made this, is that still give the seniors something, but it's
Yeah.
also take care of our kids in our bleachers. I think that's important too. But I'm
Yeah.
where the money goes is, as long as it all balances.
We'll create a list of each of these items that each of you want to discuss a little bit more, so I can just continue to move forward at the moment. Page 21, Sean covered this all well, but just to again point out, so you know where exactly it is in the budget, the capital improvements under parks and playgrounds, that's the bleachers and Governor Taylor Park at 15 each currently. Page 22, Sean mentioned this as well, but the big reductions to umpires and instructors, those were shifted entirely to the actual programs themselves, so they were, so you could better calculate what each service or what each program actually costs. Page 23, that was the 3 part-time parks maintenance workers. Page 24, this was a relatively flat budget. We created a new account, CDA projects. It's on the bottom last line item on economic development. And that 5,000 that's the match. We received a $15,000 grant for that build grant to do a redevelopment study on the Kesnick property, or a redevelopment plan. So that would be the village's match to make it a $20,000 project. And that $5,000 was in the economic development budget last year, so there's no increase there. Next page brings us to the street tree fund. The change there this year was shifting 20% of one of the public works technicians, who also serves as the forester, but moving 20% of his pay to the street tree fund. The next page is debt service. The main item is the municipal service building debt payment, which is $175,430. The following page is capital projects, but for on the back end of your packet, the rather busy, larger spreadsheet that details all of our capital equipment. If you could pull that out. So if you go all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, the total is $280,930, and that is the total of the capital equipment budget that we plan on budgeting year to year. Some years, we come in under that. For instance, this year, the capital needs that are budgeted are $273,306, which gives us a balance of $7,600. That $7,600 goes into our capital savings account balance, which is the second line from the bottom, and you can see how that fluctuates from year to year. And if you go all the way over to 2020, the furthest column to the right, that year there's a significant need for capital equipment, much more than the general planned budget, but we will have the savings there to make those purchases. So that's the plan. So if you go down back to 2016, each of the shaded gray items are the planned purchases, and the column to the left that says life expectancy, that's of course just an estimate. So when Sean and JJ go over their equipment year to year, just because something is up to be purchased based on life expectancy doesn't mean that it necessarily gets purchased. Sometimes there's a piece of equipment that's being repaired quite often and maybe needs to be moved up in the process, and then there's some that can be pushed off. So with that, JJ, if you can touch base, and Sean on the items that you guys are planning on.
Yep, the big one's a dump truck. Basically, just the 03 Peterbilt is due. That being said, it's a good running truck, but you definitely, best practice is not to have one that old, especially given that it is needed in our plowing rotation. We can't have, once it gets to 10 years, the beating these trucks take, you're running a risk. So the 1-ton dump is another one that we utilize a lot. It's used for plowing in the winter and used a lot seasonally, just because it's a very versatile vehicle. So, and then the small pickup truck is essentially, that's what utility rounding truck, primarily stocked for water utility work, the rounds that go on every day. The plan is to replace that small, it's a Ford Ranger with a full size. Since there's not really any savings on fuel with the Ranger, it's really small. So basically, and there won't be any cost difference. This number here, we'll get a full size truck so we can upgrade.
Given that, JJ, should that be moved to primarily utility expense instead of, because right now 60% of that truck is being paid for by taxes.
It probably could. It would probably more accurately reflect how it's used. Yeah.
Okay.
That being
So
said,
if that happened, we would have more into the savings account for future years.
What happens, what happens to the old truck? You auction that off?
which one?
The 08
And-
Ford.
Uh,
The Ford Ranger is an example. You auction them, yeah.
Ideally, yeah, they're not. I don't believe we factor that into any of this. But yeah, we're not going to go back to piling up the old used ones. But
No, they'd be sold on auction.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
But-
does that go to the general fund, or does that get put into the capital fund?
This capital fund is also general cash.
Mm.
We just keep track of it earmarked for this purpose. So
that being said, Sean and I have discussed keeping the old 1-ton for the seasonal help that comes, because it is so versatile. They could have an actual dump box. It doesn't require a CDL, but they'll have a dump box, and those college kids could be doing work around the parks without taking away one of our vehicles that we're using a lot too. So that may be one that may be valuable to hold on to.
Just throwing this out there, does it make sense to land any of those like here at the municipal building and then use it for just go around town instead of recording mileage on personal vehicles? Or these things
We-
are so far gone, it's not worth keeping this truck around.
Oh, no, that's been kind of it hasn't been covered in depth, but that's been I've brought it up in casual conversations, I suppose, at this point, that, moving forward, we could have options that way.
I mean,
But
I don't charge
nothing's
for
been-
mileage unless I'm going somewhere outside the
And-
village.
Super, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's worth, parking one
That's what,
that's gonna, but it's been, I guess, batted around a little bit.
okay.
Not seriously.
Thanks, yeah.
Matt, the
Mhm.
police squad, is that for leasing?
Yeah, so we can change the name of that account. It's really just a squad replacement, but that same dollar amount will cover the 2 leases.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, just to help me here, so instead of buying the cars, when you go to payments to stop, we're just going to continue to have a leasing payment every year, from now to eternity.
For 3 years, and then we're gonna
3 years and
own
then
it.
we own it, so
But
the
we do
two,
own it's a capital lease.
yeah,
Okay, then,
Yep.
all right, never mind.
we pay $1 at the end of the third
Okay,
year.
so that would be helpful, we make sure we know it's a capital lease.
And then the wing mower, you guys want to talk about that?
You want it?
Yeah, we're actually, currently we have 2 11-foot wing mowers. One of them is obviously the 2011 Jacobson. Those are about, they're about $60,000 vehicles, mowers. What we're going to do with that 80 is we're going to purchase one 12-foot and then also a zero-turn, which will make us a little bit more efficient. For the time being, we will sell this one off on auction, and so then we will still have the 2014 that we just purchased. So we will have 2 12-foot mowers, but ultimately we're going to get down to 1 and then 1 zero-turn. So, which will again make us much more efficient and pretty things up a whole lot out there.
So there's 2 mowers in that number, correct?
There is,
That's
yes.
what I did.
Yep, it's a full size, or a 12-foot and then a zero-turn, like a 6-foot zero-turn.
So, Matt, under the notes, it's number 2, so I go down there and it says split 60
Yeah.
village, 20. The other 20s are,
So we're-
Utility.
Sewer.
Yeah, 20% sewer, 20% water.
okay.
Yep.
And is that accounted for in their budget as well? There's a sheet like this showing it the 40/40, the 2020 on their capital list?
In water and sewer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does he know he's getting hit with 40% of it? Like, you know what I mean?
20 on each?
2020, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know when, rate cases and all that other stuff they're talking about.
Right.
We're really looking at a lot
Baker-
of big projects.
Baker
instead of this.
Tilly is that factored in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
So that's the gist of the capital equipment. So we're looking to do something similar to this with overall maintenance of public properties, parks, parking lots, with the idea of budgeting the same amount every year and knowing that that'll fluctuate from year to year, but you can better plan for expensive years. So
You want some-
with that, I guess, you guys can kind of make your list of items or
I have 2
anything in the
things on
budget
there
that you want
now.
to talk about some more.
I have 2 things on there now, bleachers and Colonial Club. Did I miss anything?
I had a, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On page 24, it's the village website. I know they're doing work on that, and its line item is 0 for 2016. Did that get put into a different bucket, or are we not doing anything with the?
It's coming out of cable. It's coming out of the cable fund.
Yeah, we amended that,
Okay,
yeah, the
Good.
cable
Alright.
fund to be able to pay for any kind of marketing,
that's right.
public relations, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I know they're working on it, and I didn't want to not to be.
right.
Good, okay.
And actually, that portion there, that was specifically for, when that was put in economic development, I think there was some thoughts about some specific economic development type portions of the website. So it wasn't the overall village
All right.
website in that part of the budget, but
Okay.
Would the election equipment qualify under that same category?
Marketing? I think that's a stretch personally, but.
I like it,
Just
but I
ask.
think it's a stretch.
You need to
Yeah.
buy a sign, now it's marketing.
I mean, it's good to bring up any kind of ideas you guys have like that. But Baker Tilly probably would flag us on that.
You can defend it, man.
We could run elections on
Forgive
themes
me.
we're meeting.
It's an interesting thing to look at, though, Kyle. I mean,
Public
when you look
relations,
at when you look at a lot of when public relations means, you know, if Parks needs help, or hey, these are the brush pickup days, and they need stuff, they could pull potentially. I mean, it's not an unlimited bucket,
Right.
but it's another untapped
Look into.
resource. But it doesn't have unlimited funds.
I missed the discussion on fire and police because I was late here on how to
Cut them out.
completely. That's probably
We
not
don't need it.
So Jack, where we're at right now is kind of went through each department. I touched base on any kind of significant change one way or the other, and now it's kind of the time for the board to create a list of items to discuss further and make specific motions on. So we have bleachers. Carpet and chairs was one that I heard some debate on. Colonial Club donation. Any
I guess I'd like to talk more about the
lieutenant position?
Yep.
I got a question too on the general fund. You said we had 534,000 in there in end of 14?
Yeah.
You're estimating 724 into this year.
Right.
So it means we had $190,000. Where'd that come from?
The
Our bad budgeting, is that surplus basically from this year's budget?
well, revenues coming in better than expected.
Well, that's only, how much was that though?
Um,
Well, if you get the billing for 175,000 too, that's in there. You're 190,000 better. So where's it from? You're saying the revenue now from the equalized value?
no.
Where's the revenue?
Revenue's
Just
coming in,
Overall revenues.
overall revenue's
a
coming in
little better.
higher, so.
Some expense items like the police contingency line item not being used.
Right, so where does the revenue, show me what revenues jumped that kind of dollar amount?
Well, so,
And that's a pretty huge difference there, to jump that kind of number in 1 year.
I mean, one that's gonna jump is the taxes for municipal utility. I only have 188 budgeted,
Mhm.
and that we're told it's gonna be over two. You had that discussion with the meeting. So
Yeah.
that's one of them. The,
I mean, it's just an estimate. It's hard to really come, you know,
No, I
until the
understand.
audit's done.
Even comes in at 650,
but some of the capital wasn't purchased this year
Yeah.
that was budgeted,
So-
so
so,
that's
yeah, that's
a
right.
part of it.
Yeah. The dump truck and I believe the 1 ton, they were planned for 15, but with the transition of the public works directors, they just weren't made, so that's why they're happening next year, but that'll make this year's budget look a little bit better.
I wanted to buy the dump truck, but they can't, they couldn't make it fast enough, so it would have been in next year's budget anyway.
I mean, the others can vouch for me, I've been pretty good about guessing where the reserves would end up. I mean,
Right.
I guess
So-
I want to add the Taylor Park. To at least talk
Governor-
about more.
Governor Taylor?
The trees,
Yep.
the Widowmakers.
Yep.
What we should-
And then,
Oh.
go ahead, sorry. what
No,
was-
no, I was gonna say where were we gonna start, but if you have more to add to the list.
Yeah, legal services, page 5, what, legal counsel, what's exactly included in that?
Any kind of legal work from Lee that would fall into the general fund, so the things that would be if he's doing anything that's dealing with a tax increment district or a specific development where we're billing the developer or a water utility or sewer utility issue. So,
That's a not pass-through stuff.
right.
Because that should be under budget this year.
Mm-hmm.
By about, well, the number on this sheet's 17, but the actuals, it's going to be a little bit different. So, I don't know if that's.
It's hard to predict year to year what types of issues could come up, but
I think that a lot of that has to do with.
You try to keep it down.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with what your directors are doing now, which is better categorizing too. You know, rather than just, hey, I work for the village and Bill, this was Artisan Square, this was this thing, this was that. So he's probably doing a better job of that too.
Yeah, I'd like
So-
to take a look at that, you know, if there's a way to cut down, you know, attendance at meetings that aren't necessary or something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know Lee's always, he's always come to board meetings and most plan commission because that's what, you know, past boards have wanted. There are some plan commissions that, depending on the agenda, where I tell him he doesn't need to come. The CDA meeting last night, I told him he didn't need to be there, so. I mean, I try to look at the agendas, and if I don't see something he needs to be there for, then he doesn't come. But-
Yeah, it's to streamline that, and
Mhm.
out of convenience, it's, you know, makes sense. The last page, the increase, is this,
Which page?
in-
Last page?
I'm sorry, on your
Oh,
memo, third
yeah,
page
yeah.
of your memo. Is that talking, is this over and beyond the 175, or is this below the 175?
It's below, so,
Okay.
it's $148,000 increase to the levy total.
That's counting the 30,000 we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So why don't we just
So it's
dig in and talk about
essentially,
the
I'm
issues?
sorry, Jennifer.
Why don't we just dig in and talk about the issues?
I was making
sure
we have all our issues.
Do we have all our issues? I didn't hear anything else coming up that I remember, but if somebody's got something now, would be the time.
I mean, there was the finance/clerk position, but maybe that's for another day.
I think it's something that at least, I wanted to at least get understanding on and see if that's something,
Mhm.
you know, that's moving forward, because I personally think it's very important.
Deb, when you stepped out, some of the discussion was, yeah, some of the discussion was maybe, or maybe it's filled in June, you know, so it would be about a $40,000 impact. But
Just something, I didn't see it, and I know it's something that was to be looked at, or felt was important to look into that, and if we could get savings somewhere else, it might be worth analyzing further, but.
So what do we want to talk about first, bleachers, trees, or the I can't believe I said that. The Colonial Club.
Bleachers, number 1 on your list.
Sure, let's go with bleachers.
Is it done yet? What do you fix 'em? All right, so where was that at? What's the discussion? Where was that at in the budget?
Well, $15,000 to refurbish. How many was that getting us, Sean?
5 cents.
5 sets.
Yep.
5 of the
12,
of the
5 of
12,
the
11.
and then another 11, and then another 15 next year to finish it.
Yep.
And that's in here, right, Matt?
It's in
It's
here.
in here.
I didn't really hear anybody against bleachers.
No, I think the question came because you wanted to drop it to 10 since we only took
Oh.
4 out of the streetlights.
Right.
We covered the other half of from the 30,000 from transportation and just did a savings of 25 instead.
Say that last part again?
So the 30,000 increase in transportation aid,
Oh, right.
we only decreased the levy by 25 of that and took the 5, would have come from streetlights.
Okay. So that's where we made it up.
Towards the bleachers, yeah.
Does that make you feel better about the bleachers, Pat, or do you still?
Again, all this comes from somewhere, but, you know, everyone's talking about the Clinical Club yet too, so.
And, I mean, I'm okay with cutting it, I just feel like the 50% cut is a little bit too much. I'm, you know, do we think chairs is 2,000, Matt? Because if you said carpeting was 9,
I would guess you can probably get a chair for $250. Does that sound about right?
I guess I would ask if we can postpone the chairs.
For $75, right?
Put them together.
No, they come put
required.
together.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Well,
That costs extra.
well, I mean, at 250, that would cost us $3,000.
Let's do it.
We could go to IKEA and they could pay us. I don't, you know, the chair thing, I think that's, I could take it or leave it. The carpet, yes, but if we need to find some money, I'm perfectly willing to sacrifice the chairs.
I'm okay with that too.
I'm on board with that. I don't know if that transfers into more Colonial Club money.
Absolutely.
but-
That is not if then this.
Well,
No.
that would be my suggestion, but
I have a rough time, and I have from the minute I got elected to this board, and it's not a personal thing. I think we could put that money elsewhere for the seniors that live here and keep them here in our community. But giving to a 501c3, there's a lot of worthy 501c3s. I've sat on a lot of worthy 501c3 boards, and I can tell you that not one of them is better than the other. And for us to be giving money to one over none of them, it's,
Yeah, you can't give to everybody. It's just
yeah,
tough.
then
It makes it
let me
tough.
ask you this, Jennifer. What would you suggest in terms of applying that money here locally?
I don't know, but we could start the conversation.
Okay. Okay, I mean, even that, I would be happy with some sort of conversation about what we can do for seniors here locally.
I'd be much more willing to put money into that versus 501c3. And I have nothing against 501c3s, but government giving to one is not amazing in my opinion. But taking our residents out of our community.
Yeah, there's like it's that the services won't change regardless of what the donation is. It's still, they're not missing out on those services. They're still getting that. It's not going to change what they're receiving.
They won't be blocked at the door.
Right. And so that's where I struggle, because it's like, yeah, you're picking one over another, and there's
I just felt like we needed to have the discussion, and if the majority say the 6,000 is fine, I can live with that, I guess. But I really felt like we needed to have the discussion.
A couple days ago, a developer stopped in to say that in one of their next developments, they are planning on proposing a community/senior center as part of their next development. But
Wow.
That's great.
yeah.
I think
Well-
to Harvey's discussion, you pull $6,000 out of providing a service, and I think fixing the bleachers is a service, has to be done, but it's also kind of like a one-time fix. It's a physical thing, where instead of it's a reoccurring, people are getting something out of it on a regular basis. So it's a little bit of a different nuance, but maybe I think that's more what you're looking for.
I
So you
think
can
that's-
provide back for people like.
Dump it into Parks and Rec. They're always talking about doing more
Yeah.
senior programming. I mean, provide
mean-
for our residents here.
Local lunches provided and or meals, stuff like
Send
that. There's all
Sean
kinds
out
of
to
stuff.
get McDonald's for lunch.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be great if we could have a program locally here. That'd be terrific. And if we could take $2,000 and get something started and
Build on that.
build on that, I mean, that'd be terrific, I think. It would show some effort, you know,
Instead of just,
giving it away, so to speak.
So take it to,
Why don't we use the chairs, the 2,000 chairs, we'll start, there's your 2,000.
Okay.
I mean, if we drop Glendale to even the 9, that's still 3,000 bleachers, plus the 4 for the lights, the 5 for transportation, that's 12,000. That's still 4 sets of bleachers. Or we keep it at 6, we get 5 sets of bleachers. So that would be the, so you guys have to decide on the club.
I'm okay with the 6 if we can get the 2,000 to start our own something for
give up my
seniors.
chairs for
So,
that.
yeah, so we'll say we'll move the 2,000 for the chairs to the,
parks.
no parks.
To parks,
To
parks.
Parks
Yeah.
and
He's
Rec.
saying keep the donation to 6, but move it to
The issue 6, and then we'll have the lights for 4.
towards,
Transportation 5, it gives 15,000 to rec for the
Bleachers.
bleachers. So, 5 sets of bleachers.
Say that again.
Well, the chairs.
750.
The bleachers are already at 15,000.
it's staying at 15.
Staying at 15.
Right, we just moved money around though.
So
Plus,
2,000 from
just
the
2,000 chairs,
chairs
just go to them, yes.
to starting something
To parks.
To
and
parks.
Rec.
Through Parks and
For
Rec
senior-
for seniors.
For senior services.
for senior service, because you're doing it. Did you know that was in your,
It's in your wheelhouse.
that's what you're doing now.
Senior programming.
There's a line item for it.
I might get a nasty email later.
That was my other question. Do I start a new account for this?
Isn't there one there?
Probably have to.
Fit under something.
So-
Under rec?
So you're putting it on a rec because you're calling it senior programming?
Yeah.
That's a late spring, early
That's right,
summer.
you can put it, I mean, you guys can do that in your next Parks and Rec Committee meeting.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
It's easier to figure out what to do with money than it is to take it away.
So that's one change, all right?
So the 6,000 from Colonial Club, we're cutting that. The $2,000 for the senior programming is coming from the chairs.
Chairs.
So we're still 6,000 ahead?
No, 6.
You're net zero, you're still.
Because I already had 6,000
Oh.
in
Yeah.
your, in
We're
your
not-
6,000.
We're cutting it
Oh,
from
that's right,
12 to
that's
6, yeah.
So that takes care of bleachers, going
Thank you
above
for
the
that
chairs.
discussion.
Now what about the trees?
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Don't they
I-
fall down on the roof? That's the
I
problem.
love the trees.
The Taylor, yeah.
So, is that getting a service in there to actually do the work, or are we renting the equipment to do the work?
No, that
Sir.
that's a contractor coming in to do the work.
And that's something that we can't handle?
We don't have a bucket truck.
No, we don't have a
Can't
bucket
rent
truck.
one?
We don't have anybody really qualified right now to operate a bucket truck. There are certifications that need to go along with that as well. And then it comes down to, and I don't want to speak for JJ, but then it comes down to staff and doing that as well, putting staff on that.
It's
There
not a
is gonna be
regular
a-
truck you want through there either. I mean, it's dirt. It's not a road.
Correct.
So it's
And
not
part
just
of that money is widening that path to be able to get vehicles in there. And then getting rid of the stuff that is dead and that being removed.
We got,
I have 2 questions. How many people use that park? And how many people know that park's even there?
Well, is that-
Before the trees, did people, I've talked to 20 people, not one even knows what the place is.
Well, that's not a good sampling. I'm sure there's more than 20 in a village of 6,200 people. That's not even 1%. But, I mean, I'm sure the neighbors do. I don't even know if that conversation, it's our park, we have to take care of
I
it.
understand.
If somebody walks through there, it takes one person walks through there and gets killed or hurt, or then how do we answer that question,
True, well, when they started the playground equipment on fire, what do we do about that?
right?
Right, and, well, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, is this thing just gonna be an empty park? We're not gonna put stuff in there, right?
There's a play structure in there. No, it's got,
No.
that's right, it got taken.
It's just a trail park.
Yeah,
Because I'm told
it's a
that-
natural
Picnic
park.
tables in there.
Yeah, I'm told it's screened from the road, so the police really can't see in there what's going on. You know, I'm just told by people around there, it's a problem a lot of times there.
Oh, for kids getting in there and, yeah.
Do we know how many trees are a problem?
15-ish, yeah,
And then there's probably, while you're in there, you're gonna do regular maintenance too. You're not gonna not do the.
correct.
Put some trail cams up.
I mean, I don't, what do we do with that land if we're not gonna take care of it?
Well,
What's the counter
That's kind of the question. I mean,
part?
I guess I was curious on, like, okay, this cleans it up, but are we going to be running into this issue a year later?
Sure.
I mean,
Not a year
So-
later, I don't think.
That's
but
what we
it'll
talked
happen
about,
again.
increasing that part of the budget, maybe a couple $1,000s each year where we can stay ahead of it and not have to hit it with $15,000 or $20,000 every 5 years. That's the plan, is to try and stay ahead of it.
Which really is the right thing to do. I mean, all the parks should have $1,000
Yeah.
paint,
We're-
chairs, wood replacements that are rotted out. I mean, that's.
That's kind of the intention of a whole section of the budget for parking lots, buildings, parks, maintenance, you know, and have just a, similar to the capital equipment type of approach.
We've already started talking about that at Parks. So, trees,
yeah, I mean, I don't know, is it just a Band-Aid to something that's going to continue to be an issue? And then should we talk about what you do with that land then instead? Have you had any complaints of it being closed down and they couldn't get into the park and,
well, Tom Reason.
Other than Tom,
yeah?
Tom, where are you at, Tom?
Are we or, I mean, what are our obligations as far as dedicated parkland? I mean, could we one day say, hey, let's put some houses there or sell it, or, I mean, what can we do?
Yeah, that's Lee.
Yeah.
We'd have to replace it,
We would have to replace it somewhere.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a.
I have had a couple people that have stopped in here and whatever.
I'm sure the neighbors, you'd be hearing from them.
Oh, yeah.
And if we sold it, the neighbors would really,
Then we'd really.
we'd really hear from the neighbors then.
Well, the dog park.
Level it. Dog park.
You'd still have to take care of the trees.
Still have to take care of the trees,
Yeah,
yeah.
no.
If you level it.
You think
Dogs too.
dead dogs, that
Yeah.
is not something you want to do.
Squishers.
I think we need to take care of it, and I think we need to plan for it, for a yearly expenditure.
Unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of choice. It's our park, and we have to take care of it. And I think going forward, we have to plan, like Matt's been saying, to have an account prepared for this.
I mean, Kyle, even if we were gonna sell, I mean, that's a long-term projected. I mean, what's your intent for the discussion? That
Just
throw more money at it and get it
15
really fixed
grand
up, or
a year adds up real quick for a
Yeah.
park with trees and no playground and.
I don't think it'll be 15 grand a year.
No, 2 or 3 though, but it's gonna.
That's what, I'm just
Oh,
asking.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what, I mean, it,
But there's no pavilion that somebody can rent and have a party. There's no. It's not a destination park. There's no parking.
I
It's
guess
a
I just
neighborhood,
wanted
it's
to at
just
least talk
natural.
about it because it
Yeah.
just seems like it's, you fix it and then all of a sudden it's closed down and you're fixing it again and.
It would be nice
Is
to
there
have some
something else we should
statistics on
consider,
it.
I guess? That's,
It does get used for the haunted trail. We obviously couldn't do it this year. But it does, I mean, it does have a purpose. It's one of the older parks.
Yeah, we program it one time a year, where we actually, that's a destination to go, otherwise we do just maintain it, mow it. But to Matt's point a little bit about the, creating the maintenance fund, if you look on page 21, when you look at account number 340 and 350, that's $12,000. That's all the money that we have to maintain all of the parks and the park land that we have, which is really very low. So when we get hit with things like this, we can't handle it in-house, or even, bigger issues of roof needs replacing or something suddenly or whatever, but that's where that comes into play, that hopefully we can, that's just, $12,000 is really not enough. That, you know, that's just paint and general maintenance stuff. Somebody breaks a toilet, a furnace goes out, you know, that's just really low. And so hopefully moving forward, we can tackle some of those things.
I'm just concerned that that park's a liability more than a asset. And
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people go in there on a daily basis. We see, when it's open, we see people walking through there, but it's really just a pass-through. If they're gonna, you know, you can make a circle and come around the same side, or you can go out on the south end and then walk through. There aren't buses that are coming to enjoy Governor Taylor Park.
I think it's a valuable conversation, but I think it's something that's gonna play out over many discussions, what to do with that park.
yeah, I mean, as long as we're not getting hit 15 grand next year for 15 more dead trees, then, I mean,
I certainly
That's
hope
Five,
not.
yeah.
This
Yeah.
is the first time I've heard of it since I've been here,
Easier to clear cut it.
yeah.
so.
The
If that means
properties
anything.
are an issue. I mean, it's definitely, if you don't budget for it, and I don't mean to poke things, but I mean, the concrete in Dublin, that should have been noticed years ago with routine inspections and been repaired. And there was a proactive approach this year, and it was fixed. Same thing with Governor, Taylor. If we were not throwing money is the wrong term, but if we were allocating funds to keep these things up to date, it wouldn't have been the $15,000 or $20,000 what it was 5 years ago. Similar with some of the other properties, it is a little weird that we're not proactively maintaining some of this. Some of it has to do with staff. You don't
I would say
have
a lot of it
people.
has to do with staff.
We don't have the equipment.
That's
But
the
it's
biggest thing, like,
it's a fine line.
Do we continue to keep something that we can't maintain ourselves even? I mean,
I think we'll have
we're
a
at the
better
delivery
idea.
of something.
We might have a better overall idea, hopefully after we work with Ellers on a true financial plan over 5 years, and we can see where we're sitting.
And the other thing is how do we replace that? We have to replace that park then. Where do we do that? So that would be a question that we would have to answer before we take that park offline.
Could you add land to another park? Could you consolidate?
Well, yeah, and that involves purchasing or talking somebody into giving it to us, or, So trees or no trees?
Tree.
I think you do it to this
Yeah.
point, but it's something that I'd request for you to look into further moving forward, just,
Yeah.
check the
Well,
purpose,
do you want to put some money into parks for tree maintenance next year? Because it's not in there right now.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
We're
gonna
That's
have
a
the
good point.
same-
That's a good
I
point.
think we continue, so 15 this year, and then 3,000 a year with,
Going forward.
with likelihood of maybe every 5 years, you have to do some sort of clear out of some sort.
I mean, there was a
In some
page.
park. Yeah, somewhere.
So the
Somewhere.
15,000 would take care of this next year, and then in 17, we would need to revisit that.
That's good budget.
So I had this budget you gave us last year,
Mhm.
and there's a page. I don't know what page number it is because it's not numbered, but it has the parks listed, and there was no money allocated. And I didn't see a page like that for this year. But I think that's what you're talking about. It's like, hey, There should be-
That's
Fund
the-
205,
yeah.
that's Park Improvement Fund, that's the,
that's
That's
from,
where we got the money for,
some money
for
from,
Oh, that's the like
Yeah.
impact fees. Ah, okay. So there isn't a page like this for expenditures.
no.
park?
Planned. Okay.
Yeah, so what we have here is just
Is-
everything
okay.
that ends up landing on the tax
Just
levy.
on the general.
Mhm.
Okay. Parks.
So that stays?
tree stand.
Grudgingly, it stays.
I know, it's not
So
an
that-
awesome thing to spend $15,000 on, I get it. What else was on the list?
Lieutenant, legal services, and clerk minor position.
So we went over legal services.
So you're good
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah.
Lieutenant position, I might have missed the preliminary discussion, but the law enforcement committee unanimously voted to recommend keeping that in the budget.
Jack, what we kind of posed to Chief was, could we promote within for that lieutenant position and then just hire another regular officer?
Problem, yeah, it's kind of a lateral move because then you're not getting another officer. You know what I mean?
No, and hiring another officer. Hiring a regular officer and promoting one of the sergeants to that lieutenant position.
That's kind of a police commission process, I think, as far as a management position for the department. I don't know if that's something they can do or not. I know you have to have a lieutenant position, one way or the other, but
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I don't want to burn our chief out. I mean, we don't want to do that.
I don't know if promoting from within is something that's feasible or not. I didn't even think of that, but I don't think we even discussed it at the last
We
LEC
didn't.
meeting, but I guess what bothers me is that's kind of the cornerstone of the whole Moffett report, is adding that position as a second in command for management.
And not promoting within.
Right, because
Going
we're already
outside.
less than we're actually authorized for staff.
I don't think, it wouldn't go that detailed, right? They would just recommend getting a lieutenant.
They didn't say how.
They wouldn't say how, I mean.
Well, they talked to informally about that, and it wasn't a recommendation to do anything within.
Lieutenant's in here now, right? It's in the budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is in the budget.
It's in the budget.
It's in the budget.
And the other side of that coin is too, they're down an officer that they haven't replaced from a year and a half ago, too. left.
I'm just gonna step out a moment and grab the study so I can read the recommendation, because I think it talked about education level and what the.
Just take
Yeah.
that too, we can take 5 minutes to do that.
Sure.
Bathroom.
How much longer do you plan on keeping us?
Yeah.
Well, I want water.
We go to our pizza?
10 or 11, I don't know.
Is it still on the website?
Recommendation number 20. Yeah, see, this is different than the one I have, as far as how it's set up. I can tell you what it says, I know it.
Okay.
They recommend a lieutenant position. It's a person with a minimum of 4-year degree. It's a minimum certain number of years' experience as a supervisor. And it would also have, they recommend investigative experience so that that person could be the supervisor of the detective position. And the applicable training, supervisory training.
And that would be a working position,
It is,
like second
yeah.
shift.
Yes.
So it'd be like having an officer on too.
Yes, whoever would get hired in that position would have to understand they're working, they're not just a supervisor.
Right.
Do you foresee that causing a problem in your hiring process, Chief?
No.
Okay.
The hiring process would be, you do the
Commission.
initial stuff and then it goes to the commission, or?
Right.
Okay.
We don't need to hire a firm for $10,000 to $15,000 to get that. A
Okay.
group of candidates in front of the police commission, I can do that.
Okay.
Do you already have candidates? Because I know you had a list of people.
That was for police officers.
That was just for officers.
Yeah, we have a list for police officers if we ever need to hire police officers.
That might be the thing to do. If you promote from within, then you can activate that
See, if you
list.
promote from within,
It's still your.
you have to pay that person extra money too.
Right.
It's a trade.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
how fast can you onboard, how fast can you ramp up that position that you sort of
Well,
need.
it's gonna be if the person's qualified too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's probably the key, is that the person that, if we hire a lieutenant, we know that they're gonna be qualified for that
Well,
position.
that's the chief's job.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
no, I mean, that's the point, I guess, is that presumably the new hire lieutenant would be qualified to fill that position from day one.
You're probably looking at someone that's looking to move into a chief position someday. That's their
It's
stepping
their
stone.
next step.
Yes.
And do you feel you have do you have people that you think you can pull to put together a candidate list?
We would advertise it,
Okay.
on Wisconsin Law Enforcement Network. That's where you put it out there, and I'm sure we would get a very good pool of candidates from that website.
And where does the salary come from? Where is that number
Average in the industry.
comparable again?
That word again, Pat.
Yeah.
You're paying top patrolman 57,000-ish right now. So you want that salary to be generally somewhere well above that to make it worthwhile, because a salaried position won't get overtime. And right now, the officers can make up to $57,000 a year, but then they're getting overtime on top of that. So you have to make it worth someone's while to want that position.
Is this a union position?
No.
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 Would it cut down on any of the current overtime?
Yes.
So it's 50% increase over the 57,000.
And it doesn't have to be 75,000 a year. It could be 70. You
I-
could get some. You have to negotiate that with the person, obviously.
Well, in my mind, I don't know about everybody else. In my mind, it's not. We need a lieutenant. The question is, do we hire from outside, or do we promote one of these folks from inside? It's not.
Well, I don't think that's our decision. It's if they apply, they've got to be qualified, right? That's the key. So we can't really say we'll hire from within if they're not qualified, unless the chief feels they can go through the program and get.
Yeah, you're right.
And the current
Yeah.
officers
Yeah.
taking this class, whatever you're saying, the 40-hour. So none of them are really. Not saying they can't do it, but that's going to delay the process too. That takes how long will it take them to get
I thought you said it was
qualified?
a week.
6 months.
It's a week, but
A
you have
week.
to get on their schedule.
Sure.
It gets gobbled up right away by people wanting to be a supervisor and/or get that obligatory training in.
And they have to
So
have
is
a
this
4-year
conversation
degree.
really kind of
on top
pointless
of
then?
it.
Oh, no. I'm just saying, it's
pretty common in law enforcement to have 4-year
Still gonna have
degrees
to pay
now.
the same amount of money. Those didn't change that number at all. I'm just saying, I'm just asking, where is that threshold, 40% higher is 79, 80 years, 30% higher is, what is that number that's gonna attract people to want the job? And the other side is, it's, like you said, it's a stepping stone, hey, it can't be the only driving force, it's like getting that position, to
Right.
get that next.
How long do we get to keep them?
Well, yeah, he's gonna need some, I don't think he'll work a year and be hired as a chief anywhere real quick.
No, it's
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
Thank you.
No.
It's-
And that's full benefits too. If we hire someone that happens to be single, that benefits package
Drops,
gets
yeah.
cut in half or more. It's not. So you hire someone at 70 instead of 75 and 15 in benefits.
Or happens to have their health insurance through their spouse.
like that.
There you go, then even less.
Even
Then it's
better.
even
That's a
less
job
better.
requirement?
I don't think we can do that, but
Well, and it is an estimate. I think it's a good point. You make it. It is an estimate. I mean, that's the ballpark number, and it's based on years of service and their qualifications. If they're this amazing person, you're going to pay for it. If they're a new startup into the role, you pay less for that too.
Right.
So, I mean, that kind of is what it is in the budget.
So where are we headed with this?
Well, what is the range that we're gonna offer this position at? So I guess I'm still,
I think Matt, we had discussed 65 to 75. I think that's fair.
If somebody pops up with a master's degree and a ton of supervisory experience, I mean, it could be more, you know, it could be closer to 75.
And how much would it be for a police officer starting?
On the
They start at 40,000.
So then you have 40, and then you'd have to add another,
on that sheet on the memo,
If you-
it was 72.
30,000 from
It was
you would gain.
72 all in.
so it's virtually a
It's
wash.
a wash.
Can be.
It's virtually, yeah, it virtually is.
Close enough.
Yeah. I guess that's really what I wanted to see or hear. And that's what I was thinking it was in my head, but I wanted to see it. Because if it was $40,000 or $50,000 cheaper, then you gotta analyze the other way a little
Right.
harder. So,
I just, I don't disagree, we need the lieutenant, that we do need lieutenant. I just look at our police background, we're gonna be at 46% of our budget is the police department now. I'd like to know what the comparables are in the surrounding neighborhoods, what it is, just for my curiosity.
Sure.
This starts 48.
Of what percentage, the
Yeah,
safety?
That's-
thing?
We'll say
It
the
is.
budget is.
that's not hard to find.
Because that's police, EMS, fire,
Oh, they're all in there.
that's all in that
Yeah,
safety.
it's just 40146.
Okay.
You just want to see police costs compared to the entire general fund budget
Yeah,
for other communities?
What's, the other one, which you compared to the past, DeForest and Farland.
You could swing it the other way if you hire more people for JJ and Sean. Just saying. Try it out.
You should.
Yeah.
So what's left? Did we make it through everything?
There was one more, I think.
Oh, you're
There's no
the clerk.
Well, we said that that's next year's for
Discussion,
midterm, that's right.
Well, no, we would have to budget for it. If we're gonna hire in June, we would have to plan for that now.
Well,
But I'm just saying, doing it that way could alleviate, I mean, if we chose to do that, it would, at least it wouldn't be a full year salary impact. And not that it would anyways, because, well, we would have to,
At this point, though, we'd be
Start
adding to the
hiring.
levy.
what's our levy
Yeah.
right now?
146,000 increase, which is $66, so.
You can't go to 190.
Yeah, I think.
Part of that would be utility,
Yeah. But we're also,
not a
hitting-
large part though.
we're gonna hit the taxpayers with a water increase, sewer increase, now this, I mean, we've pounded these people the last 2 years. We just have to suck it up for another year and
does everybody else feel the same way?
I think it's something we should look into moving forward. If it's not looked at for this year or June, then, and what it all entails.
Yeah, I mean, if our equalized value continues to increase, our budget will be able to increase without affecting the mill rate as much, so.
Yeah.
So something we can look at
It's-
for next week. And that's it, right?
That's in my list.
The,
I guess just another note
So
that
there's
the
just
public will
one
have
change.
we'll have a copy of the budget eventually on the website here shortly, and then a hard copy
Yeah, we
at
always
Village
have
Hall.
we always have a hard copy here.
Yeah.
you say that.
the police budgets were on the memos, and then you can match it up with their,
With 9%.
you just match it up with their budget, but yeah.
Did you say this is gonna be online for folks?
Yeah. When do you think you can get on there, Deb? No pressure.
This week, yeah, really.
This week, by the end of the week.
As long as it's by 8 a.m.
Yeah, okay. No, I should be able to get on this week.
And then the
So then
public
the
hearing
budget-
is the first.
Yeah.
first
So
meeting
the
in December?
it'd be December 7th. So the budget gets published for 15 days, Deb.
Yes.
So by the end, tomorrow or the next day.
Mhm.
It'll be published for 15 days.
We'll send it in, I don't know how, we usually need at least 3 days for them to get it in, so, this weekend. But we have plenty of time before the hearing,
Mm-hmm.
that gives us plenty of time.
Wednesday here?
The 7th?
That's the board meeting?
Yep.
It always opens
It's
with
at-
a public hearing.
at the
That
board
meeting
meeting.
always opens with a public hearing.
I'm not sure this is the right, where, Public Works, in the old building, what do we do with that? Is that for, not for the, or should we, the next meeting?
Public
Um,
Works.
Public Works and Public Properties is,
The Bonnie Road.
as a committee, is looking into making some sort of recommendation as to how to utilize that facility or not utilize.
It's better.
The main, that budget, to run that building right now is in this budget for next year, right? You know, the lights and the water,
but-
and you guys, you put it in here. It's a minimal run because it's
Yeah.
not really utilized anymore, but it's in here.
Motion to approve the updated budget with the changes,
I only have one change.
change.
That's the chairs to the senior programming.
And the change.
And also
I don't think I
public
read-
hearing on December 7th.
And, do you want me to say that?
Yeah, it's in the,
Oh, okay. And appoint the December 7th as a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2016 preliminary budget recommended by the Finance and Personnel Committee for publication and select public hearing date for adoption of the 2016 budget with the one change. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Oh, I think did we?